Oh no, my better will fucking parse it. Yeah.
Okay. Those of you listening, you're in the corner. So bear in mind, we're all going to be in the other room scheduling until this room's ready to start. So you have fun. There's a table. There's a camera. Tell us if you need us to adjust it when we're back.
Your room is online.
Yeah, it looks like it's
All right, welcome back from lunch, everybody. We're going to have to do this next part pretty quick because we have 17 minutes until the first session if we want to stay on target. So,
Who's done this before?
this is an our camp before.
Oh, I can't. We've never done our camp. Okay,
Great.
The rough way this works is we get the best possible conference because y'all decide what the topics are. So people in the room decide what the topics are, as opposed to a bunch of us decide what the topics are, top down. So very distributed, very decentralized as well, with like a little bit of facilitation. And you might have seen some folks have already taken initiative to write up some session with topic proposals. And if they remember how to do it right, they even added a hashtag and their name on their posting. But that's the basic outline. All you have to do is pick a topic that you would like to discuss. Perhaps a topic that someone else is already discussing a similar topic. Consider finding that person because they put their name on their page and seeing if you can co-lead a session. Because we basically have 12 slots. We have 12 slots, and we have a lot more folks here than 12. So that requires collaboration, right? So what we're going to do is you should see large sticky notes on the tables. If you have an idea, go ahead and grab one. Go ahead and take a look at the board to see if someone else has proposed a similar idea. If they have, find that person and chat with them. Or you can just say, hey, I'm also looking to talk about this. Who here wants to talk about that? Once you've written those ideas, we'll give that like about 5 minutes, folks, to do that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to give folks a chance to sort of lightly introduce their session proposal, and we can gauge a level of interest in any particular session. And assuming that we have a good level of interest, then we'll let them take a slot, and then eventually all the slots will be filled. So, go ahead and start writing down proposals, take a look at what's up there, and we'll call time in about 5 minutes. And then whoever's got a proposal that wants to speak to it, or people, if you're doing it jointly, we'll have you come on up and introduce it, and we'll schedule it that way. So, go for it.
You can hear
Here on the schedule, I sort of seems to me like the days.
That's why it's going to be combating for the meeting. Teaching for the I don't know, take a second. Are you okay? Yeah.
Two minutes.
Oh, right. I just need to know.
Put it in the body also.
Okay.
Actually, put it into the body. Is there one?
Now, it will help. I just,
All right, that's 5 minutes.
Everyone who's like, when I get one, like, oh yeah, one at a time. Curational sessions. So they move by. And your goal is to name. You want to talk about, so you're going to do that, and then we're going to show hands for sessions. Got 2 side rows and about 12 people in each capacity. So I'm going to start with the Gene session. Let's see it show it. Okay. Awesome. Well, okay, we're going to have a workaround. Okay. You can raise your hand for any number of sessions.
You can only send 4.
Okay, Chris always has put up 4 sessions himself, so he's very confident one of them actually. Chris. And if for some reason you have to put the slot on this, I know there's a handful of folks here in the education area. I think there's a great space for building web tools for use in classrooms, schools, teachers, researchers, etc. How can we help students better own their data and interact, whether it's in a classroom setting, private setting? Yeah, we don't really need that. Well, education is a general concept. Online learning groups. Great joining. Okay. I think we have enough there for a slide. That's green, that's blue. Okay, next, I want to get someone who has not presented here before. Jack? Are you? Are you? Peter. You never presented your opinion before.
I have not. My name is Peter Ayala. My session is distributed web. What does it mean? We're not sure yet. You heard about a couple projects. drop the landing cost. These projects have values that are similar to this community, but sometimes architectures that are incompatible for that's the IndieWeb. So let's talk about the difference between and the for web.
All right, who else has not done an IndieWebCamp presentation before, but has not? I'll start with you, Jared. This one's yours.
So I'm defining the design inspirations from social networks. The idea is talk about not underlying technology, but design-wise, pros and cons of sort of taking UI design ideas from existing platforms. Pros being familiarity and people kind of getting what it's all about, and cons being, well, how do we change things and things different. So just taking a discussion.
Cool, UX.
Yeah.
All right. Ooh, very positive. Okay, we should make a name for that. Good. Of course. Raise your hand. Okay. So, anyone by here? Hi.
Andy Weir, I'm Forrest, I'm an organization analyst, and I'm very interested in how this community will approach the problem of organization price, autonomy, and federations. It matters a great deal. All of us look at the needs. What is the implication of our local infrastructure for any of those implications? How can we implement, a variety of approaches to privacy, solidarity, and federation?
We got a mobile background, or you want to do that?
I'm the internet.
Right. Privacy, geo. Okay, just have one there for a second. Go ahead, because, now, so you're- what are the other topics?
As mentioned, I'm interested in how to turn my Microsoft here into a Microsoft server. So, even though this is the
It might be your lead, I didn't talk about the readers.
Yes.
There's also 2 other reader sessions for Monocle and other. Maybe we do that all in one session. Well, I'm saying, can we combine those?
My personal goals coming out of this meeting is that I'd like to have together and one for week running for myself. I think that's some goals. I hope that if not, I will just grab people and get stuff running.
So we combine, okay, so general like Microsoft discussion and how we get running. Sounds great. So, I'll give you the spot and we'll have those do it.
I noticed that so far there's no intro stuff.
So I'm worried that maybe it will only cover that topic. So maybe a bunch of intro people that are without sections.
My talk is like, notice the game is about where you use.
I missed your pitch, so I
library
it's a few, right?
No, so libraries, like what library application have the components. Like you want to get web engine, what would you need to get that started?
And I'm gonna add these to Jack's too, getting together and getting Monocle running, which should be intro level. I'm hoping, hey, get this one. Okay, so, Eric, so your session should be. Okay, who else had raised their hand and not? Amy and. Mike, sorry, come on up. Yeah.
For private use or access control, I think all the other analysts know it, but most of my life, most of the lives are still private. And can we also have a federated, open, individual old way of sharing that. Email is a good example.
Also, the flip side is, if all of our CMS come back in, and because it only is like private, we don't apply IndieWeb privileges to them, but it doesn't mean we have two systems. This is kind of, it'd be kind of nice if we could have some IndieWeb stuff on the back end.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm super interested in this, I'm doing what we're doing, just about to pop it out and see if there's cool stuff.
Private posts, sharing, limited groups.
Yeah, kind of thing. Yeah, direct messages, Facebook groups, let's take all that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great. How many people? Oh, big session, big session. Yep. And. Okay.
So I wrote this as IndieWebCamp. It's more broad than that, but I want sort of the contact experience stories or whatever. So there's a bunch of technical details that get in the way of it. And I have some thoughts on small things that include sense of other basic technologies, including existing standards.
That's a basic thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I overheard you.
I keep picking archiving, for example, so I completely interested in talking with publishing activities.
So publishing consumer visual content,
It's
comics are an example.
well, yeah. So I guess the thing that distinguishes in my mind is that it's straight matters. So it's long form serial work. You not just watch the latest. So
The people you have to start at square one.
yeah. Yeah.
We should go ahead. Who else did not?
My proposed talk is a nonprofit for IndieWeb, Country Market Commission mark. Ways that formal organization can help fund, preserve, protect, and energize social and tech projects. My history here is I founded a digital arts nonprofit 2 years ago, AMA, but also not to get out I made a blog post on this topic last month. It generated a lot of discussion, a lot of feedback. It's just a topic that is interesting and national.
We'll leave that for the sessions. Most of the video report. Yeah. Who else does not? So, okay. IndieWeb. It returns.
So this is like, what will it look like, from your perspective?
Let's just show that regular. Who's interested in IndieWeb bringing this? No, go ahead.
So Lillian produced the retrospective.
So you can start.
The middle one.
So I think, is that it for the formal spots with the rest of us? Have all been here proposing before, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, well, we're just closing sessions, actually.
Oh, okay.
I gotta close sessions.
Outside. So if there's anyone here that wants to do the session, the part of screen. Session up here. Okay. Sun here.
Yeah.
Sun's okay with all that, sunshine.
It's weird, it's,
It's fun. Anyone else?
So I'm interested in this topic because of the algorithm. I'm happy to do that outside.
Okay. What's up?
Let's see, slot 4. Oh, okay, 4, 3.
Yeah, so everyone's sort of the Facebook algorithm. What's an India algorithm?
You want to have our only our
Cool, and I like that idea of people other than session proposal advocating for that.
people who are likely raise their hands.
So, maybe if it's not closed session, see a session among these that you would like to see happen. Something that's there about saying, I think we had a exercise session, right?
I'm not sure about that.
This one. Yeah, right here. Oh, okay. Take you to the car. All right. Somebody else? So the meeting. That's not asking for it. Only one space, they're asking for it. We did not close the session. Both.
Okay.
But I really want to propose a session. What do you want to say? You could not propose any session. See something here now. Fine. What do you want to propose? Okay.
One of my attendants.
Oh, I'm fine. Let me read the screen. But anyone else?
Yeah, I guess advocate for it.
Well, that's good. And I'll leave you with the right session.
Yeah, the obligation.
It's closest to the library implementation, right?
Probably how to build an authorization point and you use one of those libraries or if it's one of those.
So, Jackie,
That's like the online present. Wanting to offer this and trash.
you're getting combined.
Yeah.
Well, for bear in mind, there are 2 tables in each room.
Yeah. One of themselves.
Whoa, we're making good progress here. Mike,
Next item, my comments.
okay. Well, this section, I mean,
Education, yeah, during the recommendation.
all the different, it's going through like the various authentications for the microprivate parsers, also for different microprivate categories themselves, like what properties, represent what information. So for folks that are interested in that, the goal is basically go through some of the open GitHub issues and be like, hey, let's knock these out and resolve them. There are, all right. Let's wait until last. That definitely needs screen, mobile screen. All right. You need web changes, that's. All right, well, let's look at merge. We have 2 sunshine spots left. 4 proposals.
You can get rid of the word line.
Those two are stacked for probably everything.
One is books online, the other is not.
Take the commonplace off the board.
Okay.
All right. Now we're done that.
I think you can ditch the Ruby on Rails one because I want to go to all this other sessions.
Migration. And then there were 3.
I'm interested in that microphone very personal.
You can find it.
Yeah. Well, there's 6 slots.
Yeah. Okay. Microphone 3 is first rank.
We add that to pretty specific. Here. And you're running, you know, the same purpose.
All right. If you want to go.
Zagnet wants to, but he wants to, I don't know if that's an outside one, because there's a lot of remote people in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's tomorrow. Trying to figure out how to.
On the outside lab, we want to talk to Okay, does that in there? Microphone, that's good. What is microphone? Any of these wants to go inside? We got with them where those words. If we need to. About how many people do we have? That's about the number. All right. Very important. You need to create an Etherpad or one place. I'm not sure. So you're there. So you should. All you have to do is you have to like click that link or your Etherpad. Remind someone to English it. Just ask them.
Protocol.
Can I swap with non-top anybody? For your swap? I think for. You want to go that?
Not probably outside.
This is just swapping, time slots, was that okay? Or?
Oh, no, I actually, no.
Where did Jason go? Sorry, what? No problem. You might just swap the time. To where? To the green room and, if you were organizing a session, one of your responsibilities, or the key responsibility, is to make sure that you click on the Etherpad and encourage people in the room to put their thoughts.
I would also designate at least one dedicated.
Yeah, designate at least one dedicated.
Where is the Etherpad?
On the schedule. 2018 schedule. Our time will be. Sorry, IndieWeb or 2018. When we post this photo, our time will be that.
But it is also linked to company events like the page one or schedule, so schedule it as a week.
I would put them
Like all day tomorrow.
There's not in one business. There's notes, it's not in one business. I'm gonna keep it on
I'm in the blue room. Hello, blue people. Gonna camp out here in the blue corner. My guardian star lost all its glow the day that I lost you. It lost all its glitter the day you said no, and the silver turned to gold. Ask me why you're doubtful that your love is true. If you decide to call on me, ask for Mr. Blue.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Mr. Blue. Aren't as well, proving your love is true. Call me Mr. Blue. I stay at home at night. I just want to see if they can actually hear, because I figured I'd get comments on a rendition of the Fleetwoods. Okay. Anyway. I'm manning the recorder. Okay. So what I'm going to do, depending on the number of people, is I'm going to position the chair so that nobody risks. Everybody's on camera and nobody risks getting caught in a wire. That's that. And if
Is this okay?
That's the camera there. That's the view of the camera here.
I can see myself.
And anybody can chime in.
Education.
If Nate's here, it is.
Yes.
Is that okay?
You're leading the discussion.
What do you mean me?
I proposed this because I knew you wouldn't. and-
Yeah, the other thing is I have to keep watching because the invitations have to be accepted on that computer.
Oh.
So
Oh, yeah, do we have other people watching this?
right now, no.
Oh.
But that's because no one was watching.
Yes. Your talk was awesome.
Thank you.
Because I was fighting pretty hard that I think designing for inclusion needs to be principle, not part of our code of conduct.
Just to advise you,
That's the camera.
that is the camera that's in the
That's us.
table.
Also, if you want to sit in front of the camera, this is a nice
Yes,
spot.
Well, that's why you noticed I deliberately moved the chair from there.
I get it, yeah.
I'm gonna keep an eye on that, and anybody who wants
I would
to.
like to, can I sit here?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. That's cool. I love we've got feedback from the internet. right away.
Yeah.
Right before the session was over, somebody saying, "Oh yes, I saw you posted my interview up and you're talking now." Here's my website.
That's the education.
Yeah.
So,
So I've been told.
So this is gonna be recorded for however many hours. Last time somebody cut it together later and cut all the
I
sessions.
thought they said there were Etherpads already made.
I have heard that too, but I don't think that's what happened. Why did
I've
I
been trying to teach Parent Summit for many years.
want
Now
eat
they have it. No, I wanted it instead of weekends,
Maybe they don't-
in June in person, because if you're from Portland, when summer hits, you're out of here on the weekend.
Yes.
Fantastic. So, this quote this morning, I thought was really inspiring, because I've been involved in, thanks, William.
Is it too loud?
Yeah, can you just
I've
mind
been
the
involved
mic?
in hosting some of the Indieweb meetups, following along, and contact, really
Yeah, there's no percentage.
Yeah,
I don't see those Etherpad, so they're supposed to be in this.
No, it is Chris has to set up the Etherpad. I don't know if he did yet.
That'll help a little bit.
Chris, did you set the Etherpad or you need to do that?
I'm just trying to figure out where it's hiding.
No, so there's a link, if you go to the IndieWeb chat room, there was a link from that Jackie posted, session facilitation link, and
In the chat?
no, in IndieWeb, the normal chat, there's a session facilitating link, and then there should be a link to the, of course, you gotta know how to take notes.
I don't see it. You started while,
What's the hashtag? I mean, I know it can easily just take it. Can't we?
yeah, but we just need to make the Etherpad thing so we can.
It's just etherpad.anywhere
Where's the
or
template?
hashtag.
Let's just, and you just use the hashtag the education, I guess.
All right.
I'm not seeing the link you're talking about.
So it's /education?
Yeah.
But I don't put the hash mark in the URL.
No.
Just leave it out there.
Etherpad.
Yeah, I just made it. Somebody else already did because there was their stuff already there. Did we-
So has somebody created the Etherpad?
It's done.
Oh, you're doing? Okay.
Education.
Yeah, etherpad.indieweb.org/education.
I volunteered to take
Let's
notes
take this up a little bit.
consistently. That's
Education.
So I'll get us started off since I proposed the session, but I certainly don't want to dominate it. And there's enough people I think in education, or at least I know most.
How about a round of intros?
So super quick intro so we can actually get to some content and make some stuff. I've been working in higher ed as a consultant to a handful of universities for ages and started social media accounts for several. And there's actually an education page in the IndieWeb wiki that I've started and added most of the content to. So we'll continue on around.
By the way, the wiki says IndieWeb for education as the hashtag.
That's fine.
Education. So which one are we using, Sora?
Use
education?
use education.
Okay, I'll change it. So I guess I should say something?
Sure.
Well,
Quick
because I'm
intro.
multitasking.
One sentence intro and then let's
Let's
chat.
see. I do not teach students unless you count the fact I teach employees. But my educational background is I have a degree in library science. That I still get very excited about education, despite the fact I'm not currently in that profession. So I do like talking about it.
I'm Nate Angel. I have long experience in educational technology here in town. I live here in Portland. I worked at OMSI in Portland State for a long time. I've worked with a variety of different open source educational technology platforms and projects. I currently work now with Hypothesis, the open source annotation framework that has a lot of use in education. I'm very interested in education. I think about it all the time.
Greg McVary. I'm interested in education. I'm a college professor, and I want to make the basic WordPress building blocks that we just say, hey, everybody just start learning from your own blog, and then eventually a micro subreader that replaces all those elements. But for today, I just want to think about how do we onboard and make the WordPress experience better for new users.
I'm Gab Jameson. I'm a graduate student and also taught a lot of courses about web development in journalism schools. Also, the So I'm also interested in WordPress specifically.
I'm Matthew Lippincott. I've done a lot of things in informal and formal science education. And most recently, a partner in the REN project, doing some atmospheric monitors and stuff. And I am interested in how we build web content that works both on internal networks and then externally. I've been doing that with static HTML generation that can kind of be shoved into another content system, but yeah, a lot of kids don't actually have access to full web.
And for those who are taking notes in the Etherpad, we're going to cut and paste them into the wiki for a session later. So if you write it in wiki notation, when we cut and paste it, it automatically pre-links. And
if you don't know the wiki notation, don't worry about it. And also know that anything in Etherpad is already licensed with the public domain. So if you put it on there, it is openly licensed. So the stuff you don't want openly licensed in comments or anything like that, don't put in Etherpad.
My name is Louie Schull. I am an amateur educator. I taught students group at the Evergreen State College for 3 years, teaching in environmental education and ethnobotany. My background is in science. I actually got into the through not being able to manage all my paint databases. So I'm very interested in database management systems and WordPress.
I'm Michelle. I spent time teaching in some of the boot camps and mentoring at various tech events here in Portland. Kind of the more, I guess, one-on-one type of education.
I'm Johannes, and one of these days I want to be educated.
What's your name?
Johannes.
Yeah, Ernst, E-R-N-S-T. I think he's in the wiki somewhere, but
yeah. Oh, you're in California.
I'm G. McDonald. I have been a teacher of, I used to be a graduate student in history, so history is a subject I'm very interested in, but more recently teaching web design and digital graphics at PNCA here in Portland. Also starting AppCamp for Girls, which is amateur computer education, just saying we want to teach girls and we're just going to do it. And I'm always interested, in both that, outside the institution, educational activities. I think a lot of people are very active in that, but also institutional as well. I'm very interested to know how much Indieweb is going on at institutional level, because I could imagine there could be a really good fit there for things like micro.blog or anything else.
all right. So in the notes here, I've broken out a couple of pieces as I heard them going around. One is outreach. How can we help other educators who are potentially interested in this area come into the fold and at least know about things we're talking about and expand the number of people who can contribute back into it. I heard 3 platforms: WordPress, somebody mentioned WithKnown, and then there was a static site generator. Am I missing a platform that somebody else uses or has used for this area?
Globe.gov.
Globe.gov?
Yeah, it's a citizen science database for student scientific measurements, field measurements.
That may go in. That probably fits into the third category, which is tools. I think, as rather than a broad platform, I'm thinking about things that like hundreds or thousands of people would be using on a daily basis as like their primary site for owning their content, and whereas that sounds a little more like citizen science-y interactive tool.
That's the primary site for classrooms where they own and control their data.
Okay.
And input it.
Okay.
Could somebody in one sentence summarize what the use case for the Indieweb is education?
It depends on who you are, but let's say I'm a researcher and I am doing active research, whether it's science or humanities. I may be reading a ton of material, highlighting it, annotating it. I want all that stuff on my website so that I can use it as a repository for putting things together, writing papers, writing research papers off down the line, and not only keep it for myself, but potentially share it with other potential collaborators or the rest of the public science sphere, is how I personally would use it.
And for my students, I want them to own their data, not the university, not Facebook. Like I want, like, as soon as they're done with the class, it's on Blackboard, boom, it's gone. Like they don't have access to it, they're not getting credit for it.
It's the equivalent of buying a textbook or renting it. You use it for a semester, and then when you're done, you sell it back. You no longer have that textbook, but you might want to refer back to it.
For me, it's privacy through data empowerment.
One of my friends was an art student, and she lost the rights to all of her artwork that she did because of the platform the school had her post her homework on. And since that was the first place that she posted it, she basically lost the rights to all of the work that she did for her 4 years of art school.
Wow.
Yeah, I think there's a case to be made for researchers, teachers, and students to use Indieweb.
Yeah, and if you're a student, ideally, you could post your coursework or your thoughts and work and information online. And then when you leave the class, that then potentially becomes a portfolio of work you can show potential clients, customers, employers off in the future. So
This was a few years ago when I was in college, but they used Drupal before I really knew what it was.
Oh, that's cool.
And they might still be using Drupal. Does that count?
yes, that fits in the, and Drupal in the last 3 months or so has made massive inroads into IndieWebifying itself as a platform for using that.
So the thing that strikes me in those use cases is that they're more solitary use cases than social use cases.
There are some,
not exclusively at all,
No.
but when you listen to the presentation this morning, it's all about I can comment here and I can comment. It's primarily an interaction kind of set of use cases, but this one is much more of a content ownership use case, the way you present it.
And social, because with Girls Who Code, it would be awesome if they were sharing their projects from their own domain and getting web mentions from, when they share them out, someone like gives them a like or a post, and that, that would go back on their projects. I also do a lot of, when the word MOOC, and I was sharing the story, that word massively, that always meant open. It never had anything to do with the number of people in the room. So a MOOC could always have been 3 people. It just meant you're learning massively open. And there's a core about 15 people that just hop around these same kind of pop-up learning experiences online. And I think we could really, it'd be nice to, instead of an IndieWeb Summit, we just said, hey, we're going to do this like 6-week course on IndieWeb tools. And we just, whoever can come in. So like, I think it goes back to what Gene was saying, is we got to think not just the institutional spaces, but these out of school informal learning spaces.
Well, I think even on the research side, if I'm putting my content out
use cases
or research out that others can then comment or annotate, you can comment on something I've written, and send me a web mention, and then I get it, and I can subsume that into part of my broader.
I just meant to play back what I heard.
Yeah.
Okay, there's all sorts of other
Yeah.
use cases, and so that the focus seemed to be around that content ownership, not on the collaboration.
But it's important though, because that's really like, if you have your own domain and you own your content, you are IndieWeb. You don't need all these tools. You don't need web mentions. And I think that's something we often forget when we start thinking about IndieWeb as a compliance issue. Like, do I have the latest MicroPub or this Microsoft? Like, words that a lot of people in this room are like, we're sitting there and being like, what are they talking about? And that's okay, because if you have a domain, or any place where you're just carving out your own spot online, where you own your data, that is IndieWeb. I think so. It's also, I think you're absolutely right. That is what you're hearing, but I also think that's the first place where you have to start.
There's a long history in education of giving students a domain of one's own, which is a play on a book title and a feminist book title, A Room of One's Own. And the idea being that you can teach digital literacy through having students take control of their digital lives through owning their own domain. And so there's already a lot of work in higher education, especially around that area.
Yeah, and then so, I mean, we're talking probably 10, 15,000 college students right now that are in a domain of one of those projects. So, I mean, if we've got 10 of that, it's 1,500 new users. I mean, that's a lot of people. And it's a very related project. And we're not saying those same 15 people that have followed us all around the same courses are the same like 15 people that have been in DOO since like day one. So there's a huge overlap in our communities.
Yeah, I always look at the phrase "a domain of one's own," and essentially, to me, that's IndieWeb for education is really what it boils down to.
But starting with the idea that by establishing your own domain, you're taking the first step of controlling your digital space.
Yeah.
I have a heartbreaking story. I lost a very good domain, so my heart just like.
Which
Yeah.
one?
Which one is it?
OrangeGarden.com. Yeah, and it sold for they wanted $1,500 for it, and now I have to make a bid over $200. Maybe since it's been a year, maybe I can get it back. So every time you're talking about your own domain, I'm like,
I lost femhack.tech, which was, I used to run feminist hackathons from a feminist pedagogy perspective.
oh.
And it was one of those, oh, try this new domain, you have it for $5, here's a coupon. And the next year it's like, oh, it's now $100, you know, like, hope you like that $5 a year. And then somebody else got it, now they want like hundreds of dollars, because, you know, it's like, that's feminism and tag, and that's, you know, a thing now.
Well, a lot of times too, in those cases, depending on what it is there a corporation or somebody that's got a lot of money that would want to buy it for a huge amount? 9 times out of 10, they'll sit on it for a year for residual traffic for screwy reasons. And then as time goes by, it becomes cheaper and cheaper because they don't have hundreds of people bidding on it every day.
Thanks for giving me hope. That's
So
why
you can
I
go,
surmised.
wait a year, go to it, find a registrar that will negotiate on your behalf so that you yourself are not saying, yes, I want this. So
it
you,
seems like someone else
use a middleman, and it's typically
Jared will get it back for you.
typically there's a middleman that can act on your behalf for like $20 as a service.
Okay.
And they can usually get, and you know,
It's been a year.
if you love it enough to spend $50, say,
No, I love
here's
it
my
enough to
bid
spend
is $50.
$200, just not $1,500.
Yeah, no, it's,
Talk to Jared from Name.com.
Thank you so much.
Do we feel like owning a domain is the right first step for people?
No, sorry.
I'm just curious.
If I had kept it, it would have
Well,
been.
how many people who have their own domain now started on either Blogger or WordPress.com or
Excite.
some other, like, did
think
anybody
you
go right from nothing to a domain here?
Right.
Yes, I did.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
I tend to go back historically, 5 acres and a mule. You need your little piece of homestead. So I want, admittedly, that didn't turn out very well, but I think this will turn out better.
so I have my 5 acres and David Chansky is my mule.
I'm the mule.
All right. No,
Well,
but
the
if
point is
somebody had
everybody needs that.
encouraged me back then, you know, I mean, things are so different now. Like, it was $50 a year. There was only one price, you know, and there was none of the $7.99 registered domains. So you couldn't just say, oh, I'm going to get my name. You had to be pretty committed, especially if you were a student. So now it is a little different, and I think
And most of the shared hostings have a cPanel where they have a one-push install for
for a lot of
So I'd
things,
be
yeah.
interested in what the numbers would be in students or anybody in education who actually has a domain on their own. How many of those are school sponsored or somehow sponsored like this in terms of the implementation? And how many are actually independent from whatever the coursework is? Or for whatever the structure is. Does anybody have numbers on that?
It'd be a hard number to get.
Overall.
If you go to the IndieWeb for Education page, it will show you the number of educators have just expressed interest.
Yeah.
And we could look at those and say, and maybe extrapolate.
Because I'm sort of wondering, you know, here as a student, you make this pitch to me, but then I want to graduate and then I want to get my coursework, unless it's art, in which case I want to keep it around, but my math assignments are really not that interesting some years later.
Maybe your math. Mine was really interesting.
I was at a art school, but I was doing web development there. And we could either have our own domain or the teacher would give us like our name.wordpress.com whatever her URL was.
That's what my web design
And
teacher.
out of the class, I think it was about 75% decided they wanted their own domain within the first 3 weeks.
And then what happened when the class was over?
You lost your domain if you had a u.teacher.
Oh, right, but even if you had your own, you probably still use the software that the teacher provided.
I don't,
Well, the way it works with,
I mean, most of us,
Because the teachers can host this thing indefinitely either.
but I can also
Well, yeah,
just
but-
email you with a zip file of your entire thing.
Right, so I'm trying to understand what, because if the data ownership, as in I can keep it around, if that's part of the value proposition, if that goes away at some point and I have to go through unnatural acts before I can restore it somewhere else, then, the value proposition doesn't work.
Well, from what she said, though, 3/4 of the group wanted their own domain, which means then they're hosting it and they own that from the get-go. It's not the teacher doing it and then
yeah,
handing
we
it
also,
off.
most of us also.
I mean, I
Yeah,
know
the third week
I've
of
seen
that.
some recent articles, Chris Schaefer left Mary Washington to go into private industry. And his last post leaving Mary Washington was, we have a domains set up with 250,000 individual sites. And they were going through archiving pieces or trying to offboard people who had left. Here's your domain. We want to either give it to you or we're going to archive it on your behalf and kind of decommission it. So they were working on ways of putting it somewhere else or archiving it. So if you wanted it off in the future, it was there or available.
They have 250 million different.
250,000,
Oh, 250,000.
yeah, roughly.
I was like,
Which is a huge number.
Yeah.
Well, Berkeley just announced, if you're familiar with Pressbooks, it's a set of modules on top of WordPress that allow you to publish book-length shaped documents. And so Berkeley has Pressbooks accounts for every single person who has a Berkeley email address. So that's going forward. I don't think we did it backwards.
And that's something that's actually built on as an add-on to WordPress?
Yeah, it's a package of WordPress.
I mean, I looked at it a couple weeks ago and I got the impression that it was its own standalone system.
It's
or
really
somebody
just,
was using
It's just
it.
core WordPress with a certain number of modules brought
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, okay.
Including hypothesis, but.
It's not that great.
Because that's what I was hoping for.
But it's WordPress.
But when
Yeah.
I think it's not that great.
when I looked at it, that's what I was hoping it would be. But the way all the press material I saw about what it was made me think it was something totally other.
It's just stock WordPress with certain modules installed.
It's not anything like InDesign.
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah,
But I don't think
it's
it's
a different purpose.
They wouldn't want to write a book in InDesign either.
Well, I remember.
I hand code books in LaTeX.
Yeah.
It's not supposed
But
to
it
be.
was some years ago. It was I saw a lecture where somebody had a series of products that would basically take a website and turn it into an ebook, and I think there's still a bunch of those around.
Yeah, I know WordPress has a plugin that'll do that.
Might be the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. It's escaping me at the moment. And it's a pretty common, even in the education space. I've seen people.
To me, the interesting thing there is not the Pressbooks part. It's the fact that every single person at Berkeley now has a WordPress site.
Yeah.
Just by default. It's not on their own domain, but it could be.
Well, it's one of those I look at, and I've seen a lot of universities since the internet became a thing. And historically, universities were the internet, 90% of it. And as a student, you had domain space. They gave it to you the same way they gave you an email. And they kind of quit doing that, and most universities have gotten out of the we're your host business to let other companies
building the
do it.
internet business too. That's something we need to get back to.
But typically, when you're a student, you get your .edu email address, and then when you graduate, most will either let you keep that, or they'll give you a separate custom alumni email address. And in scary part, they do it. That's one of them. In some part, they do it as a development thing because the university wants to know where you're living, who you are. Let us ask you for money. But cost-wise, I don't think it's too prohibitive from a development standpoint that universities could even offer it as a service, an inexpensive service.
Well, speaking from apps for girls,
Mhm.
would owning a domain, would that be an important part in their digital ownership
It's a really interesting question because we don't do web design, we do app design, but, having an app, especially, a website for your app.
Or having your app be a website.
Progressive web
Yeah,
apps.
progressive web
That's
apps, that's
right.
teaching that.
Isn't that the other way around, having your website be an app? You said having your app be a website.
I think, I hadn't really thought about it until just recently, and certainly till just now, thinking I would like to know how many of those kids had actual websites. They had Instagram and they had Twitter or they had Facebook, but they're kind of the ones who have no knowledge, the idea of having an independent web with just lots of independent blogs is something totally strange to them. We're sort of we know what it was like to recreate it again, but they don't really know what they are missing.
But they see value in it.
So how to get them to see that, be interesting.
So for coding, in a way, the social version of coding is GitHub, right? And
Yeah.
all of us decentralized geeks, nevertheless, all use GitHub. We don't actually do decentralized coding.
Well, that's where Glitch and GitHub, together, are amazing. I don't know if you guys have played with Glitch a little bit, but it's a coding platform, but it exports right to GitHub. There's thousands and thousands of tutorials. I'm like, do you want to build a static site generator? Do you want to build? And I do want to get eventually all the Indieweb parts where I could learn to build an entire CMS on Glitch, which you already can. And then it exports right, you can do a live preview, it exports right to a GitHub. So I'm starting a class in July, and it's going to be an open class. So everybody in here's, I want guest teachers all the time, so you're welcome to come and join me as a guest teacher. But B, just come in and do it, and I'm going to take the kids from Kevin Marks's the simplest website ever, which will basically make them make a GitHub account and a publish page on GitHub Pages, and then get them, they're going to pay for a domain project. Instead of a book. I've never made my kids buy anything in a book, and now I feel bad because this is gonna be the first time I'm like, no, you spend $30 in my class.
For the domain.
For the domain and hosting. But so I'm gonna try to scaffold it. So I'll see how it goes. It'll be my first time. Normally I've just talked for the last 5 years, I've just talked to WordPress.com and RSS. But I'm gonna try teaching it through their own domains. And what I'm debating is, do I just, and I think I've settled that, I'm just basically gonna pick one theme and say, yeah, you have to use it. And I know that just sounds so, it's an anti-WordPress, but anti-IndieWeb, but I also my main job is to teach, not be their tech support. And so I know if I say, go pick any theme in WordPress and we're gonna try to IndieWeb, it'll just be a shit show, I think it's the technical term. How many people here does anybody have a GNOME site or, I have those. And then how many people are on WordPress? And what's on nothing, on something different?
I have my own.
Your own system?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jackal, okay. So where did you start on your own, or where did you start? You studied web development, you said, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've done WordPress sites in the past.
But you know enough not to.
So,
I didn't want to get into PHP, and I like having the control. I'm very much, I come to this from the design side, from a designer point of view, and editing themes to make them look the way you want in WordPress is not a pleasant experience.
There's 3 different ways to do it, and not all of them work.
None of them.
None of them work.
None of them work.
And the fact that when I'm done with the WordPress site, 90% of my CSS has, exclamation important on it, just makes me cry.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking this one, so I'm not in the education environment, but I use WordPress, and it is painful, even for the use cases it's made for. If I was just thinking about this, if I had to do some actual serious research, and collect information and put that in WordPress, I would quit. Yeah. I cannot imagine doing this. I much rather use plain text files.
Yeah.
So am I the only one here? I mean,
no, I want to leave. But I'm so worried. This is how I'm going to onboard my students. I feel like I need a model. I don't want to, but I probably will build something else. But I knew I should be using what I'm making them use.
I would use a static site and generate it.
Oh, that's what I want to build. Yeah. And I could, but I know they can't.
No, just take one.
What?
Take one, have a few, one template for it, and then have the first assignment is write one sentence in one new file, hit the button, here's your website.
For me, the static site generators have been massively helpful in terms of documentation. You know, I do industrial design and product development, and 10 years ago, we would have physical deliverables with digital residuals, you know, and all digital production files. Now we are doing digital deliverables, and the physical object is like a residual of the digital data. And so the ability to manage the documentation of the development of this object across a whole bunch of software, like through the use of a static site generator, to just do something like generate an HTML file in the Dropbox folder that someone can click on that tells them what in the hell they're looking at. Those kinds of things have been super helpful to me. It's not a tech savvy world that's just slowly moving into, you know.
I hate to interrupt, just be aware of the time.
Oh, we have what, 10 minutes left?
Well, it is now 2:51. The next session is scheduled according to this for 3 o'clock.
3:05.
They pushed.
We pushed it back.
Yeah, somebody came in.
Like 3:10, so we're supposed to take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, so I'm just saying we only have a few minutes.
Where now?
So
How
we have
did
time to wrap up?
15 minutes,
So
technically, with no break.
To finish that thought, the thing in research that really pushed me to static site generators was the ability to have my like desktop research world of like articles I'm saving, like lookbook inspirations, etc. That's all in this one folder. To have that like orthographically mapped to the web infrastructure that I'm going to make in the future. So I'm moving towards web documentation instead of seeing documentation things separate. And then what I'm doing in like an extra pain in the ass on top of my job, like has been a huge, like a real revelation.
For my kids, I'm actually making a postcard called Backstage, where like if they build like a movie, they have to explain like step by step, how did I do this? So they're gonna have actually a postcard called Backstage. And I stole that from Alan Levine's, he ran a course called View Show that I did. And you would make movies, but then you'd have to have backstage posts that explained how you made your movie. So that's like kind of my documentation. In terms of the static site generators, I don't know if I'll show you. I just started my online class today. They had to make their WordPress.com link and post their URL to the Slack channel. Half of them post the URL from the WordPress editor. And I had to say, well, that's not how you get the URL. You have to click that little thing that looks like a link next to the title, and then copy that. And so it's like, if they can't share a URL, I don't think they're ready.
Well, and that's I think the problem with any of them, whether it's a WordPress out of the box or a static site generator, you got to spend some time delving into things under the hood to know, first what the web is and how the web works, and then secondarily, how to create content within some container or creation system and then be able to put it out there. So I think in any case, you're stuck learning something to get your content out there.
What about data types that are graphics of some kind, spreadsheets of kind of things? How do you guys deal with this? Because that's sort of inherent. When I do some research, there's always a spreadsheet somewhere.
Google Docs.
Yeah.
Google Docs. They actually get to college and like, what the hell? All this Microsoft stuff, why doesn't it work as well as Google Docs? You know, they're all pissed off and they have to use spread, you know, they're just used to things working.
Is there a need for something that can sit in your own domain?
Well, I do some GIS workshops with them. And I'm running a GIS, I believe here, I'm running a 2-month GIS workshop. That's, you know, taking a spreadsheet and mapping it to a map in a sense.
Or there are, you know, thousands of paid applications like Jupyter Notebooks that you can pay for services to have data, but it's Facebook for academia at the end of the day, and you're paying for it. And as soon as you quit paying for it, all your content and material goes. Well, I mean, some of it's open the way it's set up, but they're also building like siloed services on top of it, or the entirety of journals within academia are, you know, 2 or 3 major publishers owning.
Is there a use case in education to put a Raspberry Pi with a Wi-Fi base station in the middle of the classroom, so you connect all to it and edit something? That may not be in higher ed, but maybe in middle school.
Potentially. But I think the tough part too is having enough educators who know how these things work and can build them themselves. So even Greg is this example. he says he feels I need to, I have to be on WordPress so I can model a behavior to my students, so I can at least show them the basics. And even if that's all they get out of it is they can get in and create an account and create some content within it. I would hope that the empowerment of being able to do that, even if you're stuck within a WordPress system, says this is generally how it could work. So if I want to leave WordPress and go somewhere else to a static site generator or Known or write my own by hand.
It is what 30%
God
was,
bless.
so I think we do need to have that documentation to help. And maybe since we have 10 minutes left, if people want to either finish up with an idea or tell us, either share what you think you might want to work on tomorrow, or an idea of what you think we need to work on as a community to help out in education. So are you okay with that, Craig? I'm just trying to wrap up.
Yeah, no, or some kind of.
Either something you could need help with, something you think we need to do for education spaces, or just something you're going to work on tomorrow.
Well, this is also the WordPress
Yeah.
one, and outbound web mentions aren't working.
For you?
Yeah, so if someone wants to help me.
It's always up to
We
me.
brute forced it, but it'd be nice to do it through.
Give me 5 minutes and I'll see if I can do it.
I had a chat with one of the editors of the Prof Hacker blog on the Chronicle of Higher Education, who has said we're open for IndieWeb related content to put into their blog. So
I've been trying to get this
it's an
IndieWeb
outreach.
blog.
Yeah, ideally that would be nice too. But if anybody has ideas of little articles, particularly as it relates to higher education, they're open to it. And I think we, as a group or individually, we can come up with kind of a series of, I want to do a series of like 5 or 6 articles, either written by myself or
What if you
individual
started a
says.
page and then included the people who are here and invited us to write something?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. And then it depends too on what your area of expertise is.
Yeah,
what could you write? How would you, as an educator or somebody in the space, how would you be using your own website as either an empowerment tool, or how do you use it in your everyday life? Because I think that's the other thing too, is oftentimes a lot of Prof Hacker posts are, this is how I'm using the web and this is what I get out of it and this is how I do it. That then lets other professors come in and say, okay, somebody's already invented the wheel for me. I can steal that wheel and put it on my car and go faster, which is kind of what their model is. So if there's something you're doing in your own workflow that you can or want to share, I've got an outlet for it.
Michelle, you have a goal? It may not be even related to this topic, so you might work on tomorrow, you can be here tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow.
Okay, we'll come back. I'm not totally sure it's fine. Any ideas, any goals, or?
Too many ideas, but I'm too overloaded. So,
Gene?
I'm planning to pick up where I started last year and continue my webifying of my own domain that I've owned since 1998 that I have. I sort of went the micro.blog route, but I want to make that work the way I had it envisioned last year. So never too late.
David?
I get the impression I'm going to be helping some people,
Yes.
which I don't mind. If it happens that I have to do what they used to call the hallway track, which is do my project tonight while everybody's at donut.js or wherever anybody ends up, maybe I'll write something tonight. Because I actually do want to help people, because that's more people I can send web mentions to. If you can receive them, I can send them. So
Yeah.
I can be selfish.
I'm looking forward to that.
awesome that if you highlighted my site, I would get a web mention. And even more so
Hey,
for
you
sites
recall?
that don't know
I'm
that
actually with Gene. I mean, I'm listening to Chris's
highlights
assignment.
exist.
Goal? And I'm also thinking I'm not the right person to do it.
Well, you're not the one to write the code, but
Yeah, that's for sure.
you're a good one to say, hey, there's a demand for, because I think the other thing too is I've seen people who are concerned
like
about
like a server-side static site generator.
I'm blocking hypothesis because I don't want my platform to be a platform for trolls and whatever. But if
it's like a general.
Does he have references back to the previous ones?
Yep.
Was that automatic, or did somebody just go and put it?
That's because this Etherpad has been in use since 2015.
We go in afterwards and we dump it to the wiki and then we just link to it.
Yeah,
That's really good.
The previous one.
Pump it out.
Okay, let's see. Do we have enough people to like actually just get around the tables? We can.
I'm just
Maybe we'll all
trying
fit
to-
around all the tables.
Yeah, I'm just trying to guard the wiring, but we have them over here. So I can slide over if you want.
Cool. That makes it fun.
Just bear in mind, you end up having your back to that. Stuff together. So just wait.
Sorry to those people.
So just wait to the people at home.
So assuming we get internet back.
The Wi-Fi is back.
Yeah. The stream seems to be back also.
Would you guys, I think that people will be talking out there, it's not in the hallway. You can pop the door, but.
Pop the door, man.
Oxygen's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that power strip have three?
Yes, got 2 spots.
I'm trying to put things in the Etherpad if everyone's on there. Etherpad.indieweb.org/microformats.
Hello, Blue Room.
Hello, Blue Room, back. So we have a guest finally.
I
How's the
can't
audio?
resist. The audio is fine. I can't resist a microformat session.
Okay, good to know again.
All right. So we've made really good progress with microformats parsers in the last year. I think the most recent one was like a Perl one to drop, I think. Perl parser. Pretty sweet. But we have a bunch of improvements like in the pipeline that I would love to see how many of those we can get knocked out. Both in terms of like the parser specs and parser implementations, and in terms of vocabularies that people are adopting and expanding. So I don't have a particular preferred order for these, but I'm dropping a couple of links into the like GitHub links, parsing issues, and the other one that's probably got a bunch is, let's see if I can put the right URL. Yes. H-entry issues. I'm guessing with the time that we have, that's probably going to be enough to fill out. If there's anyone here who's interested in like starting a whole brand new microformat, that's probably something better to do like after party style. Like we can talk about how you do that. There's a lot of like soft issues, research and stuff to do. It's a much more involved process. So I was hoping to keep this a more focused session on like parsing bug fixes, improvements, vocabulary, like existing vocabulary improvements. So with that, does anyone want to nominate any particular issues to go over first? From the microformats 2 parser or from H-entry?
So microformats 2 parsing 24. So what do we do about no script tags?
Parsing, no scripting.
Yeah, okay. Or, yeah. I think in other words, can we safely tell everyone to ignore them?
So let's
Maybe
do
not.
that. I'm just gonna keep putting URLs in the notes in Etherpad. I'll bring them up. So, can you summarize the issue? Does it have a proposal?
It has a proposal, I actually miss. Let's see.
Parsers are handling the no script tag in different ways.
Yeah,
The spec seems to be silent on it.
The final comment has my view on it.
Thank you, Martin. So Martin has a proposal.
Can you summarize, Martin?
So if we go by HTML spec, it's mostly about whether we think scripting is enabled or disabled. And let me see, if we assume scripting is disabled, the no script element is like any other, like a div, basically. So you would parse it. So that would allow people who are doing JavaScript-based applications to put their microformats in a no script and still have it parsed.
Scripting is disabled for parsing, and it seems pretty reasonable.
So in general, when we looked at the, like adding new tags or whatever to the parser, we looked at like, what are the use cases that people be using it for as a way of trying to judge, like, how should it work? So in this case, like, what is the use case of putting content in a no script? Because in today's browsers, like loading scripts isn't guaranteed, but it's becoming harder and harder to turn off scripting, which would be the only thing that actually triggers the no script content to show up at all. And that makes me suspect that the stuff in a no script will tend to be nearly invisible, nearly as invisible as meta tags. So is there something special going on there? Like people publishing it, people wanting to mark up the information that's already in no script that we need to know about? Or can we just say, ignore no script tags completely?
Well, I wonder if anyone's putting, if you have like a JavaScript heavy site, right? I wonder if anyone would want to put like fallback content in no script, right? So like, I'm gonna fill in all this rich information with JavaScript unless you're like a crawler or something, in which case here's some like unstyled stuff that look ugly like it's there. You see what I'm saying? So like, I'm wondering if
crawler, but even crawlers are trying to execute JavaScript at this point. So in that case, they're ignoring no script. The technique I've seen people use to do that is to put divs with that minimal content or whatever, but then have it CSS display none by default.
Okay.
And the JavaScript like decides to show it or not. Based on what's active. So that's why I'm asking, like, has anyone actually encountered a use case here, or what would be the harm of saying ignore all no script?
Yeah, so the one of the use cases here is from my site. It's the motivation was to help people on the types on core connections, basically lazy load big images. And so the full image tag is within a no script, and JavaScript goes and finds it and swaps it into a placeholder image tag once you scroll down to that image. This is I didn't implement this as a WordPress Jetpack thing, so we'll see other sites that do it, and probably outside WordPress too. I don't know that it's a good idea or that I should be doing it, but.
So you want that image to load if the user has JavaScript turned off, that's what you're saying, somehow. You want the big original image. Yeah, you want the big original image to load if somehow they have turned JavaScript off.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, the image at all. Yeah, it's not, yeah, so without, it's not that it's if the placeholder is lower res, it's just nothing.
So if they have JavaScript on, then they get a low res version at first and it progressively enhances as they scroll.
No, if they have JavaScript, it'll load, there's nothing, the placeholder is nothing. It loads the full one just in time when you scroll to it. Because if your page is this long and then you're seeing this much, we don't want you to have to load all of it.
Yeah, but if they have JavaScript off, then it's just going to load everything at once, and they don't get the progressive enhancement as they scroll.
Or, yeah.
Do you want the fallback to be it loads anyway?
Yeah, and in this case, you're missing anything tagged with as microformat as image or and especially notably in like page cards.
There is a written comment on this. No script for user agents that do not do scripting are like div tags and shouldn't be ignored. If you have a JavaScript-based website, you can still put parsable HTML in a no script. If an MF2 parser does not do scripting, which it doesn't, it will parse the no script contents. Therefore, no script equals div in those cases, which.
Where is this?
It's in the meta room.
Okay.
I'm monitoring the rooms to see if anybody has any comments for here.
Oh, in IRC?
Yeah.
It is what I said, but apparently my sound cuts.
Got it, thanks.
No, I understand the theory behind it, but in general, we've been resistant to add features or requirements to the parsers based on purely spec-based arguments, other spec-based arguments, and like it's always needed like a concrete use case to be worth the cost of causing people to like add the code, maintain the code, or sorry, add test case, add code, maintain code, because that's a maintenance task like forever for every feature. So I understand what you're saying, Martin. But
I'm saying follow HTML spec as we already require that.
I understand, but you're making a spec-based argument rather than a use case-based argument. And I'm saying that typically we've rejected purely spec-based arguments like that without a use case, because it's just causing more work without an actual benefit to users.
So the average microformat parser now will just do nothing special and consume the contents if it's in no script tag.
It's inconsistent. That's why this issue is here. Some parsers are doing something, some parsers are ignoring it. And we could just say all microformat parsers should ignore it. We could just say all microformat parsers should treat no script like div.
I don't know. Probably just the inconsistency.
Ryan's brought up one use case.
The opposite use case would be probably the majority of things content inside no scripts or something like, hey, you have JavaScript off, go here for this other thing. And those are low quality to useless to see in a feed, like an actual content elsewhere. So,
I mean,
use case on either
the
side.
parser is generally server side, right? So it's not going to, the whole notion of whether you have JavaScript turned on doesn't really apply in that case.
Some crawlers execute scripts, some don't. So yeah, it does apply. Servers do actually sometimes execute JavaScript or not, therefore have JavaScript off or not.
Sure, good, like it's rumored that Google crawlers do that.
They claim that, yeah.
But I mean, just given any microformat parser, like runs in PHP or whatever, there's no notion of whether or not JavaScript is turned on.
Right, so this is asking us to define it. That's the question that's being asked. What is it?
Yeah, my proposal would be state that microformats parsers do not do scripts, and then just refer to HTML spec as we already do.
That makes sense to me. Just ignore it as an unknown tag.
That's not what you're saying. They treat it like a div.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's what I'd phrase it better. Treat it like a tag you don't know what it does, or treat it like a div. Because in HTML, if you have a tag that contains a word that's gibberish, let's say, they'll just keep going.
That changed to HTML5 slightly. It actually looks for the balancing tag.
So if we accept that, we can expect to see a few more like, hey, you have JavaScript from blah, 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 snippets in comments on posts that come in, what I mentioned, in feed readers, in any kind of aggregator like Indie News. Doesn't seem great. That may be the more common, yeah, the alternative would be to treat them special and ignore them, in which case you'll have to change this or other people who use late voting. Not, yeah, it's very fewer.
All right, shall we try to accept no script tags then as a div? And see if anything breaks?
Yeah. Which parsers would need to change? There was a collection. PHP and Go would have to update. What do they do with the script tag? Would they have a specific case for it? They drop some things inside those scripts. Maybe we technically say that and move on each time.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot of interest in one or the other.
Yeah, let's go ahead and put that in there as, and then there was other parts of the question. So Martin's proposing that we do that, right? And that and from that you can follow that they should be included, which I think happens automatically in maintaining content. Yeah. So H entry number 4, people are potentially that should be showing up there.
You discussed 4, 5, and 6. So stream's back on.
So 4 is about I thought we had accepted ePhoto, did we not?
According to this, we didn't. And the last comment
The Aperture consumes it.
is on March 7th of this year.
So I think we should be good to go to accept ePhoto. Did we not accept that? So David, I think this one's like, we have 3 consumers, Aaron noted, so I think we've hit the number we need to do, and I'm just trying to see, I thought you'd already made that edit, but maybe this just needs to be closed, and we can move on to the next one.
The next one would be video and audio, depending on what order. If you want to go in numerical order, videos next.
This is kind of a basic question, but it's not really covered in this. Just sort of glancing at it. Can you go to the inside content?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be multiple way in that.
Video, last I checked, we were looking for more consumers. Has that actually been updated?
Is it too late for me to post that I actually support consuming it?
How do you consume your video?
The PostKinds plugin, if you put in a URL that includes a video tag, it will offer to embed it. So that's technically a usage.
So it parses it for microformats and then
offers to
looks for any video?
Yeah, and offers to include it as it looks for video, it looks for audio, it looks for photo. So it's looking for all 3.
Okay. Can you add that as a comment to the issue?
I am adding now.
Cool. So that gets us to at least Bridgie and PostKinds.
No, Granary is 1.5 of Bridgie because it does conversions from my activity streams. So that's separate from Bridgie.
Oh, actually, so for video, it's easier. It's from to and from silos too. To and from silos also.
Okay.
As well as activity streams. So.
So Bridgie / Granary, we have PostKinds plugin. Do any of the new readers consume it? Like actually show you the video and I did put the video together. Together does it? Okay. Can you add that to the? And that's it. So sounds like PostKinds. Plugin.
I've added it all
Together also consume the video. That should do it. I think that's enough to do. Yeah, just for expediency, I'll handle updating the spec and then closing out the issues after the time. Okay, so does anyone go on to audio? David, number 6. Right?
I both publish and consume audio.
So when you say I, what's the thing that's consuming it?
The consuming is still the PostKinds plugin, which looks for all 3 of them, all 3 media types. And the podcast I started doing does post audio posts with the U-audio tag. So that would be a publishing example.
I don't do this yet, but it would be really true to be that installed in my podcasts.
To consume you audio or to
No,
publish?
for publish.
Okay.
So with this, we just insert an audio tag, which doesn't use you audio. It would be.
Very cool. Do we already know that?
We have another one, Eddie. Eddie posts with the audio on his website, Eddie Hinkle.
So that gives us 2.
Granary.
Okay. Does the together also process it? Yep. Okay. Okay, then that's enough to think that push it over the edge. Great to hear. Okay, that's the ones you mentioned. That's half of the issues, outstanding issues for H entry. Any more there, David, or should we go back to the issues?
Did we ever get read up in there? Because I know we're starting with Indie Book Club. Is there? We have an issue open for that somewhere?
You should open an issue for that.
Is that an H entry or a microformat 2 parsing issue?
H entry.
It sounds like you're adding a property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's H entry.
Adding read status too. So, I don't know.
Gregor was in the room, but okay.
What?
Well, oh, there you are. Sorry.
That's like,
No, you're back to me and I'm saying, wait a minute, you are actually in the room. What-
Is the proposed markup documented on the wiki already?
yes.
Okay.
Or is it-
IndieWeb wiki.
On the IndieWeb wiki?
Yeah.
And
I'll
are there
link
like
to
IndieWeb examples that cite people posting it? Okay. So we have publishing more than 3 obviously done, right?
I think Ryan, are you doing read of and read status in your post? Once. Yes.
Back to those kinds,
Mostly,
read of,
it's
but not
mostly
read
me,
status.
yeah. And then Indie Book Club publishes them as well. It does not consume them yet, but it probably will in the near future.
Cool.
It's pretty early stages. It's not like it's going to get added today.
How about Chris?
Yeah, Chris Aldrich, read posts. Mm-hmm.
Something weird. How did I not notice you're sitting next to me? No.
I just couldn't tell if you were saying it sarcastically.
No, I just honestly do
or
not
if
see
you'd
it.
said, I wish Gregor wasn't in the room. So that's why I was kind of like, wait, what?
So I'm going to propose going to the oldest parsing initiative, which is number 2.
Woo!
Yeah.
Image alt text.
Which I think is waiting on an answer from Ryan.
Then he deflated.
I'm the last word on that issue.
And have you tried it in the parser?
No.
Okay.
Fair point. All right, well, I'll give you 10 minutes.
This is a pretty important one. So yeah, let us know.
But no, I will absolutely, I will absolutely, assume I use it, then.
So the point here is to make sure that the parsing works as you expect it to like give you the feature that you need.
Yep.
If it does, then we can like green light it and add it to the spec and for other parsers to do it.
So 26 is a related question that's not waiting on implementation testing. Maybe needs more discussion than we have time for here. It's implied here. So talked about handling all, et cetera.
Parser number 26. Okay. So date time value class pattern parsing. Okay.
The summary is that image URLs often end up in implied key names, and URLs are rarely useful in.
Wait, sorry, which one are you looking at?
Microperformance 2 parsing. Oh, sorry, no, not 26. 35. Sorry about that.
Oh.
Okay. Especially with recent implied key name rules, image URLs often end up in implied key names, and URLs are rarely human readable, and so that's. I'm not sure that was what we wanted when we went through implied key name rules.
I think I agree with the source, but I'm not sure about the alt.
Yes, Martine agrees, and Martine says seeing the URLs in URLs coming from source in implied key name was kind of an unintended result of a change that he proposed, and he never intended that to be a result of it. So he agrees with him. But I can let Martin speak for himself if he wants.
Yeah, we recently changed the implied parsing, and I think none of us actually looked into whether source would make sense in implied parsing. It just kind of happened into it. So I see no reason why we can't strike that again. But to drop source completely goes against a pretty early version of the microformats parsing spec, and that felt a lot more drastic.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It really only bothered me in my use cases for implied, not explicit.
The latest MF2Pi removes source and alt for implied properties. Go take this comment.
The one that you announced just today.
What's that?
The one that Carter announced just today.
Oh, I didn't know it was today. Maybe. Mostly done to please you and Bridgie.
I'll take it.
Seems to be selling all of a sudden.
I'm curious, does anyone else do anything with image alt anywhere?
The image alt case was there to handle the case where someone just has an image and no additional text around it.
Yeah.
And then so they put like someone's face and then their name in the alt.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with alt staying here. I was curious in general. I think while you were reading the issue. Don't really not much. That's fine.
Which that case wouldn't be impacted by this because we're talking about an image inside, like as an implied property, right? Or
I mean, the issue
like inside a
is-
root microformat, not with the
Yeah,
roots
the
on
issue-
the same element.
Or the roots on the image.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I think the proposal is to drop just source from just implied DNA, or at least Martine's proposal, which I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd say narrowing from my original idea to drop source and all from implied and explicit. And so I'm fine with Martine's.
I think I like that proposal.
Okay. Is that in a specific comment?
I have not commented on this one yet, but I can thumbs up his proposal.
What's the easiest way to see, like, an example of what that looks like when it's parsed? Is there a simple way to?
Yeah, so the issue description has a minimal example for implied source. It's not rendered, but.
But this, like, what would it?
So we've got Martine's proposal and 2 + 1s on it
It was,
from Ryan SSL.
like an H entry,
okay.
not an H card. What would it? Go down. What would it?
Doesn't actually have a proposal. He's just explaining about the stuff
The,
above.
the proposal for the spec is in the second comment.
Content.
What?
second comment has, I would propose one of the following spec changes and the list.
Okay,
That's, I actually don't think it,
that sounds reasonable.
I'm not sure about that. Because you're basically adding a title to the post that doesn't have one.
Oh, yeah, whether, so I think that's a bigger question, do we like implied meaning parsing at all?
Yeah, and maybe I
Which
just need
is,
to catch up on
yeah,
it.
yeah. That is definitely, is a question.
Is there other, I'm just looking at the,
So we're just using the alt attribute then, and no the source.
For implied.
Only for implied, overall?
Martin's proposal was drop, so don't do source for implied, keep using it for explicit. But I think it's pretty rare that you would tag like just something with source like image and you tag an image with meaning. So
that's really interesting. I didn't realize that it worked this way. I just need to catch up on my comments, I guess. But I would, I don't want to open this debate bigger, but if there was a larger debate, I would probably want to debate whether the implied meaning should, whether that should be that way at all. Like this. Yeah, is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
We have trimmed it down in a lot of cases too. Like if there's any other property now, any other plain text property, P whatever, it doesn't imply a P name. Because it was giving us a lot of bad stuff or unuseful stuff.
So it only happens in like very small markup cases, is the idea. That was the intent, to handle like small pieces of markup with just one root class. I think that proposed resolution is fine. It's a conservative change, so if we want to open a separate issue for trying to get rid of source in general, we can do that separately, but let's solve the implied problem immediately. Okay. And I think that's Martin's proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. The implied names. Okay. Cool. That'll resolve that one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then that gets us back to this.
I have another one. I had a moment, so I opened up a new one.
I'm gonna say, let's look at the existing ones, because they might have a proposal that we can accept, unless you have a new proposal that you think will immediately get acceptance.
You listen of, and I have 4 different people publishing and at least 2 different people consuming it.
We need at least 3.
Okay.
Yeah. But keep documenting an issue.
You say it is 3 publishing or 3 consuming?
Both.
Okay. Do we have it? I have at least 3 publishing and at least 2 consuming, but I need one more person to.
What's the issue?
You listen of, which is the status of listening to something. So I have an example of it being used by, let's see, Eddie Hinkle, myself, Chris Aldrich, and Kurt Williams.
Is that threshold just to add it to the official spec as a property, or?
As soon as someone's publishing it, then we can put an experimental. There's like experimental section, like draft, and then like core. And so things like slowly start to mature and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's stuff we can do relatively easy outside of
in the issue, you're welcome to propose saying, hey, this thing where we are publishing it, we should at least add it as experimental. And then you take care of that. Microformats parsing issue number 3. I'm just going to go to the oldest. Parsing language information.
We have this in PHP MF2 behind an experimental flag.
We do?
Yes.
So we have consensus on the proposal, I think.
I don't know the exact criteria for that. I don't know that anybody's like using it, isn't consuming it from like formats.
No one's consuming it. Okay.
I don't think I've actually seen this issue. I think I'm looking at a different one.
Number 3. Oh,
yeah, I'm thinking of the PHP MF2 specific one. I haven't seen this number 3 yet.
You're talking about the 96. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're both They're all cited together from
We
both
can
sides.
postpone for now if no one's consuming it. No one like wants, like, we need someone to step forward with a parser that says, I will try doing this.
Well, no, the PHP MF2 parser
Is doing it?
is parsing, yes. It's in an experimental flag, so if you just get PHP MF2 and run it, you won't get it, but you can turn that flag on, and then you'll get the language stuff.
Can you
Yeah, just let me
put
know.
that in issue 3?
Yeah, yeah.
And so then we're just waiting for someone to try it and make sure it's giving them the result they expect.
Okay.
So it's implemented behind a flag. Okay.
Looking at issue 3, it seems that the node parser has it as well. Or the JavaScript parser, I should say.
You broke up, did you guys get that? The node parsers apparently.
I heard that part, I missed the last part.
He'll probably transcribe it in chat in a minute.
Yeah, okay.
No? But not behind a flag, it just works that way. Is that right? This is experimental. All right, we'll still need someone to try it and see if it works as they expect it to. All right, that's good to know. Let's do number 4, implied time zone, I think. So this is if you're using the value class pattern for publishing a date or time, and you don't publish a time zone, then the parser looks to see, has there been a recent date time property of the time zone? And
PHP MF2 does this.
it does, okay. Then it uses either previous or the next one.
Reasons within this document.
Within that object, not even within this document,
Got it.
within that same micromonths object. So if you have multiple times that you're publishing inside some object, like start time, end time, and only one of them has a time zone, then the others will automatically pick it up. Seems fairly consistent with what a human would do.
So the counterexample is your host writing, so your posting API or client has time zone support. You're posting an event that you're gonna host when you get somewhere else. And so you end up with start and end times for the event without time zones, but your host has the time zone you're in, which happens to be wrong. This is contrived, but maybe an example where it would break. Do we care?
That's exactly my counter argument on the issue.
No.
Yeah, the last comment.
Did we already? Maybe narrow enough that we don't care about that. Great minds, Martin. Or we say if half of your code or your CMS is good enough to be time zone aware, but not the whole thing, that is on you.
Oh, we're at time.
Yeah.
We did make some progress. That's a tough case. I don't know how to address it. So unless someone has a proposal.
I mean, the proposal would be to say that use case you lose because the value, the benefit outweighs it.
Yeah.
Not for sure.
I mean, I would be okay with that, but that's one that I would want to like put as a comment on the issue and have it discussed a little bit more. So, you want to add that to the issue? Sure. That'd be great. And with that, thanks everyone. We just went through a whole ton of issues. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coordinating.
Okay, this room next.
Now we've got
thing
the spec updating to do. Multiple specs. Thanks for the work. What's next in here?
Vouch.
Okay. Just to make sure the others, we have a 5-minute break between us.
Yes. Which we are 3 minutes or 2 minutes into.
Cool. Thanks, Martin.
I was thinking of asking if you guys would mind swapping the rooms for the web ring with the room for Microsoft, only because I want to keep an eye on the equipment. And they're both the same size room. Otherwise, I'll move, but then I have to delegate one of you guys to watch that. Which
Yeah.
it isn't that involved a job. I just figured.
I can find whoever's running that session.
What?
Find whoever's running that session.
Aren't you running that session?
Yeah,
That's
we
why
can
I'm-
watch your stuff.
That's what I'm saying. Your
Yeah.
choice. Either you watch it.
Oh, we'll just watch the stuff.
Okay.
That's less.
Just make sure that if it disconnects, you watch it.
Okay.
That's all that needs to be done. So I'm staying in here for the next one anyway. I'm just gonna run the restroom again because I ran a little fast last time. That was fun. Yeah, we realize now I'm going, that I noticed that 8th century repository that I'm going to have to add some more stuff. I didn't realize I was supposed to be adding that. I just usually, 5 or 6 people have this property, I might as well steal it. I didn't know there was this organized process.
How you doing, Andrew?
Good, how are you? Okay.
How's activity last weekend?
Pretty good. Yeah. Making progress. I haven't had, it's half I haven't had time, half I haven't had motivation.
Is it for, in Ohio or in?
Some stuff, generally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real life.
I haven't had a lot of time for the Indieweb stuff either.
Okay.
Oh, well.
It's supposed to be fun, whenever feeling the obligation.
Exactly.
There's vouch.
Yeah, whatever room I'm in is
Here
always
to
a hot
decide
room.
on this one. What are you gonna talk about? Just,
I think architecture overview, and then, I don't know, maybe.
Well, for vouch?
Yeah.
Well, again, the vouch protocol is, if you've ever read the page, all we have is one page. Some of the other things were nicely turned into a spec page, which is easier to understand. But I do not understand vouch. I understand the
I
concept.
always have to wrap my mind around it.
Yeah, but all we have is this picture of a whiteboard there, and we have some implementation.
The text is a lot better on that page.
I keep trying to think through a simpler protocol.
I
never find anything in my brain that says it can be simplified.
I was hoping that somebody who feels that they have their head wrapped around it might be able to.
Well, I've implemented it, so I hope I have my head wrapped around it.
Would you volunteer to be the assistant facilitator?
Sure.
The concept's simple though. You get the concept, right?
No, I get the concept. It's just when you look at the flow chart and you look at the page could use some improvement.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So I was hoping that, somebody going through it here, recording it, that I can go back, watch the recording, and we could work on the page. Because I'm prepared to write the thing, if I actually feel I understand it.
Writing it is a good way to force something into memory.
But if you look at it, there are like 3 different documents there: web mention support only, web mention with vouch support, web mention with vouch support with asynchronous web traffic.
Where are you looking?
This is the vouch page.
Where?
Lower down.
The flow chart?
Below the flow chart, you have the summary description of the flow chart. I'm just saying, this page is extremely busy.
You've implemented vouch, Gregor?
What's that?
You've implemented vouch?
Yeah, only in ProcessWire though, so like literally I know of 2 people installing this
Yeah, but
plugin.
you've got your head around writing the code for it.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm
will
having,
say, Gregor, I will say,
Yeah.
you sent me a vouched web mention that would never have gotten through my validation.
What?
He wouldn't have passed his vouch test. Is that right, Martin?
Yeah,
How
it
so?
would not.
Like,
It would not. You let GitHub vouch for you, but anyone can let GitHub vouch for them. So I am never going to whitelist GitHub.
Oh yeah, I mean it's not. It only excludes like a handful of domains right now.
Oh,
like Twitter, it doesn't use Twitter or Google. I could add GitHub to that, yeah. But that ultimately, like what you accept as a vouch, I mean that is up to you. You know.
Yeah, but I'm saying that GitHub URL.
Awesome.
But it would be a GitHub URL with a username in it, right?
Yeah, but vouch is domain based.
Oh, you don't include the path?
No, the vouch that I send, it should have.
Can't you just keep the whole URL?
You want vouching in here? Yep.
That's the lingo, yeah. Did you have something to
Yeah,
vouch?
but for
You can't just walk in.
Gregor.
Oh, it's like saying,
yeah, but have you sent them a web mention?
Of course I have.
sorry, Martin, what was your last sentence?
for vouch validation, you
Yeah.
usually check per domain.
Yeah.
And
that's
I
not
would
enough.
I would not accept GitHub because anyone can open a profile and then say GitHub vouched for me.
Yeah, but don't you need to match? Don't you need to match the username?
What?
I get that you want to ignore GitHub, but can't you trust that one URL from GitHub and ignore the rest? Blacklist the rest.
Are we
I
actually starting?
But that's
So
not
you're 4 minutes.
spec, according to
Yeah,
me.
we are talking about vouch, but we haven't really talked about.
Yeah, did you get my last question to you?
So whether I could whitelist just that specific profile?
Yeah, can you do that?
I could, but that kind of defeats the point. Because then I could just whitelist Gregor as a sender.
Of course. Yeah.
He
I'm
needs
kind of surprised, actually. I mean, I think you've linked to me before, Martine. So at some point, I should pick that up and like, I should send your own URL back to as a vouch. Say, hey, you've linked to me before.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah,
I haven't like monitored my vouch database or anything. It is possible it's just not picking up stuff, or maybe it's totally broken.
Well, why don't we start at the beginning?
Okay.
So vouch is an extension to web mention. We're all in agreement on that one. So, and basically, yeah, you write. I'm gonna read from the wiki. You write. You write, and we'll see if we can sort this out. So I'm just reading from the description on the wiki, and we'll see if we can sort of boil this down. So it's an extension to web mention that covers moderation. So in a standard web mention, you have two properties, source and target. Source, yeah. Source, again, being where it came from, target being where it's going. So we're going to skip over whether or not those things are valid URLs because that's part of the web mention thing.
Yeah.
So vouch adds a third property called vouch, which is also a URL.
Okay.
So then we get to the question is whether or not the target approves the domain of the vouch.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, and
Okay. And that's like what the vouch spec wants us to.
yeah.
Okay.
So it checks to see whether or not the vouch URL provided has a link to the source domain.
So a good example of this is actually, the one that's used most commonly in these discussions is the IRC people page on the wiki, where basically everybody who wants to in chat can go on there and add themselves, and they're linking to their personal websites. So if I don't know Jackie, we've never commented back and forth on each other's sites. I want to send you a comment. I could say, here's my vouch. It is indieweb.org/IRC people, which links to me. So you verify, first of all, does this link to gregorlove.com? Yes. Then you decide through whatever method, like, do I trust indieweb.org as an authoritative vouch?
Got it.
So, which,
well, that's
most
the,
people,
that's the bigger question. I've never figured out, how do I decide who I trust?
I think you just have to choose on your own. Yeah, you kind of build that on your own accord.
It's not really okay for a spec though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's an implementation challenge. It's not, the spec says that I have to decide that the vouch URL is trusted because it links to these people. Well, how do I decide that? That's always been the.
So in my personal, the plugin that I've built, I actually do have the option to only accept whitelisted, or excuse me, to only accept web mentions from a whitelist. I do not use that, but I do maintain that whitelist. I have a page that people I follow, and basically the plugin goes through that every night. And it just, if I add somebody to this list saying I'm following them, I add Malcolm will be added to my whitelist. So if I received a vouch from that somebody sent a vouch for Malcolm, I'd be like, yes, I trust that. So it's a semi-automated process. Like that way, I'm just adding to like my following list, which I might subscribe to in a reader or something.
Yeah, because the one way to kind of fix what you're actually, like, let's say you follow people on GitHub, you could use the URIs in their profiles and use that as like a vouch source. But then you would have to find a way of getting people's. Well, I guess you could pull out of like H cards if they have a GitHub link.
Yeah, and it basically goes to the biggest process in here that isn't real, that nobody really discussed is this.
Well, it's hugely personal, I would say.
Yeah.
Not only implementation specific, but this like vouch answers the question, where should I know you from?
Yeah.
And then like you decide, and that only you can decide like whether that from is something that belongs on your website.
Yeah.
So
I'm more thinking that there are no suggestions about this. Yeah. I feel that the vagueness is, I feel the vagueness.
I gave a suggestion and an implementation, but that also requires people to have like a blog roll or something.
Yeah.
Which many people probably don't have.
Right, exactly. That's where like having something like a bridge or like a Fetty bridge vouch. Like if you actually follow on social media.
I have a domain whitelist, so I could use that as a vouch source if I wanted to.
Any Jesus Christ. Any whitelist mechanism could work here. Like, you just roll your own. Yeah, you just whitelist. That's not.
We have, there's services like Block Together. I mean, there could be a whitelist together.
Unblocked together.
Oh my God, we should call it that.
What'd you say?
Unvouched together. Yeah, just like whitelist.
Who's volunteering to build that?
Nobody. We're just spitballing.
No, whenever somebody says there should be something, I always ask the question, who's volunteering to build
Let me go get Ryan.
No, that's actually good, because there's this person who runs this master instance called Kitty Town. And she intentionally did it to kind of protect herself from other people. Like that way they could automatically cross-watch and share with each other, but it was somebody else outside. I mean, to be honest, to take outside of that, it could be like a Mastodon level. I'm gonna keep C4G because that's essentially what it is. Like use social networks to build that. But you could get really do a backfill thing. If you follow them on a website, if you follow them on a social platform, but they also have an IndieWeb website, you can use it to prime your DB, but then fall back to, you use the domain afterwards, if that makes sense.
Having Bridgie's, I think, a perfect, or Granary is almost the poster example where you reach into a silo where it's like you've already got a following list.
Yeah.
And if you trust the people on that list because you curate it, I like that a lot. Yeah. And that's one I think that goes the extra step that a lot of people don't want to talk about for vouch, which is like, I don't want to make this list.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's really hard. And so if you have, that's really good.
Somebody's documenting this, right? I'm facilitating. I can't also be documenting. Somebody's writing in the ether, right?
Just hear no keys clicking.
No, I'm just saying I'm technically facilitating.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Last time I was typing, but.
Did you allocate
Nothing in the
crap? Is it, are we?
Slash vouch.
Slash vouch?
Yeah, it's an easy one. Yes, I'm a bad facilitator. I should have been.
I agree.
I mean, a lot of stuff was.
No, I'm saying I should have been making sure someone did that, not, yeah.
Except that you.
A lot of stuff
you
we've
want
done
to
is recap everybody gets so far.
Great, because like
that is the kind of thing.
what? Sometimes
No,
I feel
true.
like if I do this, I have to put like some kind of UX on top of it that will allow me to like do like soft motivation, the moderation. Like if I put you in GitHub and Twitter, cool. But if, like let's say you just met me on the internet randomly, I could do something like your post will be like your web mention would appear on my site. I don't know. This is
Yeah, this is where I fell down. So when I first started allowing web mentions on my site, I thought, well, obviously I need to build a moderation interface before I do anything. And so I stopped doing that for like 2 months. And then eventually I was like, you know what, I'll moderate later. And I just built it, and then I haven't looked back. And like a couple of like weird things have come through that I've deleted, and I just decided for now, let everything through and fix it.
As long as you can delete.
Which is like not actually an acceptable long-term solution for the world. As they come online. But like, this is one thing that's strongly missing, I think, from like our UX patterns that we've documented on IndieWeb is like, what does this look like elsewhere?
Yeah,
you know,
we
like,
need an example.
Facebook has examples of like allowing things on your timeline where it's like somebody trying to post this. What do you think about that? And that's like its own interface. There. WordPress does the same thing for comments. I don't know of anyone that does something inline, but it seems like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, ideally it'd be nice to have it in line, but to be honest, if we wanted to go far, this is something that could be built within. Oh God, this is actually.
Tomorrow?
Well, it would be like a complement to like webmentions.io right now.
Yeah.
Instead of like setting it to that, so you can have like a vouch.io, and it will do the same web mentions works, but it will also have moderations because I don't want to tax things off of Aaron's system, but I don't know. Ask some hard questions though. That's good.
That's my job.
Do you have any, like, I was thinking about adding vouch on top of web mention, and instead of doing that, I added like blacklists and whitelists checks first. Have you done any of that in WordPress?
I have a whitelist.
Yeah.
I do not have a blacklist. And the reason why is I assume everybody's malicious until I've proven otherwise.
Exactly.
It's easy. It's admittedly, you have a choice. If you build both a whitelist and a blacklist, it's more complicated. If you build one or the other, what do you choose? You either choose to assume everybody's good until they're bad, or you assume that everybody's bad until they're good. So right now, let's see who's actually on my.
I just built both, and I use neither of them. I do what Marty does and delete stuff. So.
I chose whitelist, but with a flag whether or not it's on. So like, I'm building the whitelist, but I'm just not actively using it.
What problem does it solve? Because I'm looking at this and like, okay, so
spam.
Well, but so you choose something. You have to choose a target for your vouch. So URI. By the way, both of you are on my wet list.
You know, that's where it's open. Like in a case.
Yeah, the sender does. Yeah, but so now you have to. But how do you find something acceptable to you're sending a web mention?
So the reason that the way that I find, I basically track refers. When I get an incoming link, I put that in a database and I asynchronously check those to be like, does this link actually link to me? And is it also not like Google, or there's a handful of sites that it ignores. So when, Marty.
Right, but that's not actually vouch you're doing that.
Well, no, that's
That's how I build my list of possible vouch URLs. So Marty writes a comment in reply to me or something. Somebody's going to click that, come to me. I'm going to track that as a refer. Eventually, I'm going to verify that. And so now I know, and this happens all the time. I just check my logs. When I respond to Marty, it sends him one of his own URLs as a vouch because I know that it links back to me.
Yeah, I guess if you're getting web mentions, you can.
That's
the same.
That's another really, that's probably easier.
So there are two parts to this that I'm hearing, which is one, how do I verify and what do I verify on? And the other is how do you build this list that way, which is how do you build it automatically and proactively build it?
Yeah.
Because one is
No one's going to write a handwritten list.
Yeah.
We might, but no one else will.
And so like the first comment then, the voucher would point back to just the comment it's coming from, or like?
No, like if I don't find a vouch, I think if I don't find a vouch URL for somebody, it doesn't send anything. I think. I don't remember. I have to double check that.
That's a mess.
Yeah, what I think where vouch gets kind of off in the weeds for me is that this is really something that requires a human in the loop.
Yeah.
Not just like moment to moment when you're like deciding to moderate something, but also that, but like the high level rules, like vouches, I get, like I just come back to it's like, it's a way of saying like, where the hell should I know you from? And then what I do with that information, it feels like.
But no, it's not even exactly that.
It's
like an authorization.
No, it's not an authorization. It's saying like, here's somebody who's linked to me, and you've linked to them. That you've linked to them, or like you probably trust this third party, and they've linked to me. So if you trust that,
Well,
chain,
let me play the devil's advocate on that concept. So just like I use the two of you as an example. So I am friendly with you in this example, and you are friendly with him.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I should trust him because you trust him.
How would you know that?
That's the well, the question is, just because you trust him, do I trust you enough to know that all of your friends are also trustworthy? No, it's just sort of a question. What if you are otherwise a nice guy, but you're prone to let's say inappropriate comments, like you gratuitously use profanity, and I don't like profanity. Not necessarily a bad thing, but something that would make me uncomfortable to automatically post. I don't know that about you, but that's the sort of the question.
That's right. Yeah.
Damn, man.
And that could be a post by, well, that could be a post by posting, like you said. Like,
not even denying it.
Why would I? Proofs on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that boils, like what Mark was saying, like it's a human thing and it ties into implementation. Like, you have to choose. But then you're not, like, let's say your post gets like, God forbid, like 100 web mentions in an hour. Like, you're not gonna go through everything.
I think Vouch, I don't know if it's designed to fix everything, but at least gets rid of like totally anonymous comments that, you know, they're still identifiable because they're a valid web mention, but you otherwise don't want to know about that. So Vouch only solves a subset of the issues that are out there.
Yeah. To be honest, like the bare, like if you're doing this like raw, the bare bones, you could have like at the bottom of your page, when you have web mentions, you could have like people I know, or like people like I'm familiar with, or not people like just the rest of the world. Like these people have verified through Vouch, and this is like everyone else. I think Ars Technica kind of does have some of their comments at the bottom, like they promote people that write a lot and they didn't know, so they push it to the top. But
So you're talking about giving, in theory, again on the criteria, you're talking about giving everybody some sort of score as the level of trustworthiness.
you could, but this one would be just immediately a binary kind of thing. Like if they pass a vouch test, then you can show up here. You can have like a separate tab region that's just people who haven't passed a vouch test, but you still show them.
Okay. So
well, if you care about cursing, then you want some sort of a content filter.
Well, that
Vouch
is
isn't enough
for a
for
different thing. No, I use cursing as an example.
No, I'm just saying, like,
I'm just trying to think of something. I'm trying to think of something that's not horrible but might make people uncomfortable. That was
There are some simple cases where like
I considered racism, but I wasn't going to suggest that of you. So.
But like there are some other, you know, fairly innocent cases where like I allow something through because of Vouch, and now you're in there, and now like you happen to be, so like you use a Vouch through Gregor to get a post on my site, great, but then like you're friends with some person I have an abusive past with, and now that you have a post on my site, they can vouch through you, and like is Vouch sort of becomes a default whitelist unless you're also like
blacklisting.
Yeah. Or
it adds a lot more questions, which is why I want to talk about it.
Yeah. See, and I think that's the part about this is amazing. Like there's just like this base implementer, like you put whatever you want in there, like it can pass a series of tests.
Yeah.
It could be like the first one's an automatic blacklister. You're not in there, cool. Go for like, do I know you from GitHub? Do I know you from Twitter? Do I know you from my personal blog role? Web ring?
But there seems to be a disconnect from like all these places it can from, and then but you're guessing one of them and putting it in URI. Like
it should be okay.
Not guessing.
You're not?
No, you're saying that this vouch URL links to me and you have linked to this vouch.
Yeah.
This domain of this vouch. So like you have some, I don't want to use the word trust, that's not the right word.
Yeah.
You have some interaction with this vouch URL and so do I.
Yeah.
And if it's a vouch URL that you trust.
That reference URI. So
It's basically friend of a friend. Is the simplest way to describe it. It's trust me because I know this person who knows you.
There's, also like one of the FAQs, is vouch saying you know me from? Not quite. No assertion of may or no. Just here's someone's permalink, C, that you, B, I hate the use of letters. I hate the use of letters for this.
No, my point is that after this, one of us has to go in and rewrite this page.
Yeah.
It needs to be, but this is a good basis for rewriting this page in a different way.
Yeah. That would be a good outcome from this session. We have some.
Yeah, all that vouch is saying, none of you know me, but Gregor has linked to me. So when I send a web mention to any of you, I say, look, Gregor has linked to me, so you might want to trust me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
And that's the stage where you're guessing that this is important. This will verify you with them, or
well, that's if you're vouching.
That's
and then
that's up to everybody. Like if I'm on your follow list or something.
I see what you're saying.
is
maybe there
like
are
like the zero knowledge proof is not there. It's like
right, because we haven't talked about this, like the vouch URI. It's not just about who. I could actually look at that and be like, yeah, Gregor liked one of your posts one time. That is not enough. Like what is at that URL?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing too.
Yeah, that is a good point.
That should be
That's a very good point.
Because all you're doing is cutting down like the global population to like a subset of that, right? That's all you can say about what you know. Well, you don't have to trust it, of course.
yeah, it seems like there's a bunch of implied social graphs.
There is, yeah.
And why not just have them explicit, or like have your Bridgie that takes all the Indieweb users and and I don't know. I guess you'd need a. Well, I guess
it could be a Bridgie.
Is there standards for social graphs? Or, I don't know.
That's excellent database.
Yeah, it's got the data of all the different link relationships and what they are in terms of microformats.
You could have a reinforcement thing, like this person. Now you're going to the aspect of scoring, but like if this person links.
Well, I mentioned the scoring only because any algorithm has to make a decision. It's not always yes or no. Sometimes it's I trust this more than I trust that.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go to that level of complexity. I'm trying to think of what is the simplest metric that I can use to decide if I trust somebody.
Yeah, and then that's what I was going back.
Like on your blog roll.
David.
Yeah.
Like my implementation doesn't involve scoring, so I mean.
Yeah, but I trust you. But remember, I only know a subset of your life. I see you at these events. We talk in the chat room. You could be out there.
Sure. If somebody leaves a nasty comment with me as a vouch URL and you accept it, then you would probably blacklist that URL, right? You blacklist my post in response to somebody who's.
If you have that ability, I mean, that would be a feature that you need in your moderation system. Because this vouches.
Well, that would come in. Does that mean that I trust him less?
Moderation pipeline. Yeah, I think that's up to you.
Yeah, no, I'm saying these are all questions worth asking.
Yeah.
When you're trying to figure out, and I have the added burden that I have to try to figure out something that a whole bunch of other people might trust, which is a hard burden.
I think vouch is very good for surfacing other posts in moderation queues.
Yeah.
So if you put everything in a moderation queue, because blacklist everything first, then surface the comments that have a valid vouch. So you can say, check these people first because these comments are probably okay.
So that's sort of an interesting idea. No, that one also didn't occur to me. Is it segmenting your moderation list?
Well, and then when I go full hog and becomes spam assassin then, and it's like you weigh the various vouch URIs and come up with a score. Oh, it made the threshold. That'll auto vouch.
Look, I look forward to you building that service.
The suggestions here that we have, let's see, do you approve the vouchers site or domain, which is the simplest one, which is a whitelist of some sort, even if it's a blog roll or what have you. We have here nicknames cache, outbound link cache, a cache of every domain you've ever linked to. Well, that's a hard thing to.
Have you got that?
You can
I don't
get
think
web
I-
mentions.
Oh.
You can, I think you can put all the mentions you ever sent. Or you could look at any map and actually look at that, like all the mentions sent out.
They're technically in my database.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's sending his own web mentions.
I send my own web.
You're perfect.
No, what I'm saying is they're there somewhere. I've never actually tried to generate them as a list. I probably could.
Yeah.
But
I don't store them like explicitly store them either. They're in my database as well, but I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to make a list.
Well, you're-
Store
yeah.
them properly.
yeah, and right now they're stored in each individual post.
Yeah.
So that type of
walk everything.
No, I'm saying for that type of query, that's
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would need some kind of aggregate thing, like ideally do it like once a day, so you can do like.
Yeah, you don't have to do it that often.
Well, I'm throwing numbers
that's
out.
true.
Yeah. Well, it depends also how often you post. Like, if I manage to like pull in like on your gram and like my like activity pub level, I'll need to do it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, my volume's kind of loud.
But I don't think it's necessary to seed the list with every link you've ever posted.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, that's what I'm debating. It's where do you get the data? And I have I have a list technically that I can generate of every outbound link I've ever made.
It's just
Anything
every.
I've ever said a web mention successfully to, or everything I've ever, even a ping back, I have that list.
Yeah, but it's just every domain, not every URL. Yeah.
If you want to whitelist on domains, it's all about what you want to trust.
You know, this is it. Just coming up with a more explicit protocol to implement, I guess.
I think, as I said, I think the page lacks the discussion of here are some ideas about what you might.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So brainstorming what you might actually vouch based on would be a really good section for the page also. It's sort of, because that was always my biggest issue. Figuring out, looking at the protocol and saying, okay, fine, if I trust this person, let them through. That's the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
It's trust that's hard. And
okay,
I'm not necessarily a trusting person in that regard because bad things happen. But here we are. A key goal is to build a system with zero moderation tax.
Yeah.
No, this is, I have to go look at the history and see who wrote that, but I can guess. At least to deal with automated spam systems.
This is gonna sound like an easy question. How many implementations of vouch are there in the world?
That we know of?
2, 3. There's Ben Roberts and me. Aaron does part of it. He does, he receives, he doesn't send.
Yeah, I received 2.
Because I'm prepared to do receive. Receive is one thing. Send, also hard. Send is figuring out how to tell somebody else that you.
Can you add yourself, Martine, as receiving?
Yeah.
I've come up with a solution, WebReg.
But that's another trust. That's how you.
How many times have you
Why didn't we
how many times have you
define
said that exact sentence?
Yeah.
And how many of them link to your domain?
Sorry, guys. The actual solution here is blockchain.
Oh my god, it begins.
Actually, I like your bit better. Now I just want to drop into people's mentions when they talk about blockchain. I'm like, actually, web rings.
You'd be like, I haven't heard of that crypto.
Oh my god.
But web rings are a relationship. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
So it's another thing.
Just cycle through your web ring until you find someone who sent you the back.
Yeah, so if your hypothesized web ring thing works the way I think it does, the person who starts the web ring is going to have a list of all these links. So suddenly they're going to be a vouch for everybody.
Yeah, if we do it that way.
Yeah.
You have that post contain all of the members of the ring. One post in a web ring. Great. So
because there are other experimental ideas. There's follow posts, which haven't really been. Well, the idea being that if you go on any basically silo or any social network, you have where you followed somebody. It's a status. But there was an idea that you have a post that says you're following somebody now.
Yeah.
And that post triggers all the other things down the line, generates your, let's say, a theoretical blog roll. Puts
well, and
everyone.
that post would make a hell of a vouch, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, what
So
do I do from?
there is
Oh, I
yeah.
follow this person. I said so.
There is whatever's, I don't know, what is before an experimental property? One level below that.
Non-existent property.
That's funny.
No, there is a hypothetical property that some people are actually posting, which is,
If they're posting it, it's experimental.
yeah, okay, it is unregistered or whatever, you know.
You're talking about follow post still? Sorry.
Yeah, follow of was the property. And there are people who are posting these things, or have suggested it, and the idea being that it's a post that says, I'm now watching this person or following them in some way. And that is more of a defined vouch. Maybe did the room post those? I know I don't.
Oh, I think doesn't Chris?
Well, if I build something.
Yeah, Chris does.
Chris.
Amy Riero.
He asked me to build it, I put it in.
This is a follow, so I dropped it in the meeting, right?
Okay.
But he's migrated past me, he's now building himself. I taught him how to do it.
Wow.
He just,
you set him free.
I just made it really easy to build them. It just set up an array of properties and just say how you want it to work. And we still have time. We have 10 minutes.
So, David, I have a question in terms of your blockers for wanting to build this in WordPress.
Yeah.
What's up?
Okay. Mine? Okay. Number one, how I trust people is not necessarily how other people trust people. And even though I build for myself, which again is always, I'm always very keenly aware that when it's something like this, it has to be a little more flexible.
Yeah.
When it's something where you're telling other people how they should be trusting people,
I don't know if call this trust, because it really comes down to
Trust really shouldn't be.
Do you have the right links to be done? That's the only question.
Yeah.
You can't really say more. If you really like subjectively distrust someone, you're gonna have to blacklist them. I think that's the only way through.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm sort of saying I don't know how to model this with all of the people who would just show up and use the plugin.
Can I try to slot this into the existing WordPress moderation ecosystem?
Yeah, which is, it would have to anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So from a standpoint of what's already out there, I would say like most WordPress users probably just use Akismet, and which uses like content tracking and reputation scores based on who knows what. They have some secret sauce that is all like content based, but probably also contains some amount of source tracking that's vouch-like.
Yeah.
So why not do something similar, hook into these tools where so what do you have in the back end for WordPress? A comment is like approved, it can be flagged as spam, it can be awaiting moderation, or it could be trashed.
Well, the thing is, Akismet only works on spam. It doesn't decide whether or not something's approved.
Right, okay, so it will take something that is awaiting moderation and give it a spam or no spam flag.
Yes.
Okay.
So it doesn't solve the vouch problem.
Is there another state? Could you add a vouched state?
Theoretically, but custom comment status in WordPress is.
This sounds like one of those open tickets.
Yeah.
Years ago that I heard so much.
Yes. It is, there's no official support for it. It's not that there, because technically there isn't a comment status field. It is the field in comment is actually to be a comment status
To have
field.
an extra state.
And there's a proposal to make it a comment status field, and that's still open. But right now, it actually, the name of the field is comment approved.
And what are the official values for that?
1 second. I want to make sure that I'm being accurate.
So you're suggesting an additional state so you can filter by that?
Yeah, so like
They wouldn't be shown by default. It would require some sort of moderation, like to show them.
I think that would be I think my thinking is that that flag would then give it a different display in the WordPress moderation system.
Okay.
So like something that would otherwise have just been like pending approval because WordPress doesn't know, you can, and like spam gets like a big red background that's
right.
Just like, this is probably bad, throw it away. And something that's vouched could be that's like, oh, that's pretty, it's probably okay. Maybe even with like a little display of something about that vouch.
Yeah.
Although it sounds like, given that one of the goals is like zero moderation admin tags, probably the less extra information you give, the more closely it fits with the design goals of Vouch. I just have a problem believing in the core philosophy of zero moderation, yeah, like fully automated moderation.
No, like, yeah, I think you always have to keep an eye on this.
Zero moderation is not a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Here we are.
And I'm like,
I have that listed for you. Technically, let's see, we have hold, which is the equivalent of 0, approve, or which is the equivalent of 1, spam, or trash. And if you try to, according to this, if this function is being used and you actually try to set one that is not one of those things, it will return false. So there's, unless you do a whole bunch of other gymnastics, there's no easy way for a custom comment status to work. It will not work with a lot of WordPress tools without a lot of, because let's see, the function in question is used by the REST controller, which means any REST functions that with a non-standard status would not work. So there's a whole bunch of things that wouldn't work.
Because there are a lot of things that filter on that status.
Yeah.
And they would disappear as soon as they had an unknown status.
Well, they wouldn't disappear because a lot of them are done manually. But some of the newer ones would, some of the older ones would still work. I'd have to actually test that to see what would break. But the biggest problem at the moment is that you can't guarantee what's going to happen because it isn't, custom statuses are not anything. That's why I can't do async.
Is there a
I can't set a draft status for a comment. There's no option for that.
Is there a comment meta?
There is. That's where we store a lot of stuff. Yeah, so you can store it in
the
meta.
vouch status in there, and then you have to also write some admin backend
to filter
template changes to.
Already done. I've done that for location, so it's easy enough.
Yeah, I think I might have actually wrote some code that ties into comment meta to get around the whole like Akismet auto spamming web engines.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could do something similar.
That was my thinking, is like something that is just a bare minimum. Like, let's try this.
I'm looking for a bare minimum to start.
Yeah.
Because again, anything that I do that's too intrusive is going to really annoy a lot of people. I have at least one person in the room who would be annoyed, definitely.
Well, I mean, right now I think I turned off Akismet, but.
No, what I'm saying, you would be annoyed if suddenly I did one of two things. I made a decision that suddenly approved all of your comments.
Yes.
Or suddenly blocked all of your comments.
Comments or web mentions though?
The same thing. To WordPress.
No,
to WordPress they're the same thing.
Right, but I'm saying I have code that works to auto approve only web mentions.
Yeah.
Because it uses the meta.
It would only be looking for web mentions.
Correct. So like, and that comment meta probably already has the vouch, right? You're already saving the vouch in there.
At the moment, no.
No?
That's step one. Incremental improvement. We found it.
The vouch, yeah. We are not actually saving the vouch.
Okay.
Save the vouch.
At least the last time I checked.
Save
This is gonna bother me
the
because
vouch, right?
no, I remember talking
Vouch
about
save
saving
the
it, and I remember that I almost positive that Matthias told me to take it out on the basis that we weren't doing anything with it yet, and to wait until we actually had something to do with it. But
what kind of
collect all the
kind of data minimalist approach is that?
Well, he seems very concerned about GDPR lately. So.
Yeah.
We are not storing vouch as a property.
Okay.
No, that I can do. That's
All right,
easy.
we have 4.
Yeah, that would be good, because then you wouldn't even need a separate field. You could just check, is there a vouch in the comment meta? Then,
Which is search.
well, I guess you're asking, you're saying actually vouch, like it's been verified.
I mean, that store it first,
Yeah.
decide to verify it second. If it's verified, store it. And then decide something to do with it. I think one simple thing, it would just be bubble that information up to the user in some way. Give them a little like, "Beep, this is vouched." There's still so much to me about vouch that I personally am not sure that vouch is actually a useful signal. I think it's a very clever hack that because so few people are using it, it is impossible to tell if it works.
Well, that's
And
sort of
what it
why
actually does.
that's sort of why I'm wondering about it.
Yeah.
I didn't say that I couldn't understand the process of sending or receiving one. It was more the
useful. It's the but why though?
Well, no, it's
Yeah.
not even the why. I understand the concept. It's sort of most of the people who are having trouble talking about implementing this is because they don't know how to figure out criteria. For what do you once you've decided that that's a voucher sign, what do you do with it? And then how do you decide that? Because the protocol doesn't actually explain any of that, and the page doesn't really discuss any of the considerations that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So if we incorporated all this into the page, it might help a
Yeah.
lot of people, and that's sort of what I wanted to go for, because I'm prepared to build something.
I think a lot of it's buried in the FAQs.
Yeah, but there's an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I put in there, like, as an action item from the session, like, we should probably rewrite it to at least use generic names instead of A, B, C.
If you scroll further down, there's
Yeah.
maybe it's just editing that's required.
No, it needs, I think the whole page could benefit from some.
Just Alice and Bob will do.
Yep.
Can a vouch apply to shared membership? So a vouch could, for example, be user Kevin Marks, which links to the domains known Kevin Marks. Then the receiver has to decide, do I approve of IndieWeb.org, link to it before, then I'll accept that site as a vouch and specify vouch URL and thus the web mention. So this talks about basically shared membership, which is the IRC people page is the example they use, where there are multiple people on a page, and then how do you decide that? So a lot of the things we talked about are sort of mentioned here, but not necessarily is the vouch a sponsor? Vouch is not a sponsor or any other new term. It is just a permalink which links to A, and which B is likely to approve.
Perhaps the receiver is already a fan of yours, secretly in their private whitelist.
You say it like that.
That's how I read it. And I was just like, wow.
Because the other option is to look at the original brain dumping into IRC and see who was talking. And I can guess who was talking just by the writing.
Does it have pros and cons for
This
why?
was, I mean, vouch was Tomtek's idea originally.
Yeah,
for this
but
session.
I was there that day.
You mentioned IRC people though. Are there pros and cons already written about using such a list like that, or are we just rehashing like what people have already thought of?
And can we do it in the next 0 seconds? Time's up, everybody.
Leave that one hanging for you.
I think I may just do some stuff on this page tonight.
The schedule works out well. I was just staying in this room all afternoon.
Well, as I said, if not for that last one, I would stay in the room all day.
Sticking around.
But I'm switching it to microsub.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this is the IndieWeb ring.
Yeah, that's why I'd asked if you were willing to switch rooms, but since instead you volunteered to watch the screen. All you have to do is make sure that there's always an image of us over there.
Okay.
If an image of us ceases to be there, please fiddle with it. By the way, you cannot access anything of mine that is personal on there because it's logged into the IndieWebCamp.
Okay. Well, why am I even here?
Nah.
Why are you even here?
It was a joke.
No.
Thank you, Admiral Stockdale.
All right, John. This was great.
Anyway, I'm gonna leave this.
Yeah, thanks for
this is
diagramming that.
Yeah,
Very helpful.
Does somebody want to take a picture of the diagram before we? And basically put it in the wiki.
We'll make a wiki page for it in the next 24 to 36 hours.
Okay. Like use all the user pads.
Just post it on your website and we'll
Just keep it on your phone. Keep it on your phone for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you can't log into the wiki, can you?
This gave, I don't know about anybody else, but this gave me a really good place to start.
Good.
Yeah,
that's what I really wanted.
So Anil Dash, like he's like really, like he wanted to be part of IndieWeb, but he's like, oh no, it's just a bunch of developers. Like this started a conversation with him and I like, wow, okay, y'all are thinking about this. Like that's one of his bigger blockers moving into this.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you say you were interacting with them about it?
Yeah, well, he like DM'd me because he saw what I was talking about. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, yes, come on.
Awesome. Then yeah, it would be great to get him involved.
Yeah, that's
He's
like-
he's very aware of us. He's mentioned us,
Mhm.
and usually not in a bad light or anything. So
Nah, I mean, his big thing's like make it easier for people to get in.
Yeah.
Then he'll do whatever he can. And like we have his support, it's just also the races from there. Yeah, I think that was like my bigger reason for coming to like see what I know, see what people here know, and like see if there's something I can build within the middle, or even just like say it so somebody else can like work on the thing.
Yeah.
Hardest thing about this, I have to lead by example, which means I have to redo my entire stuff, which is great. It's fun.
Wait, what do you have to redo your entire site for?
Well, so I can do. I want to get to a point where I can use my site as like an activity club server.
Okay.
So I can like pull off Twitter, but then I can posse out everywhere else. That's like long term goal. Right now, web mentions are kind of funky. I do want to get to like a better like following color list. Like these are people like these are my friends. Like, these are my friends, and like these are people I work with or like in my social groups. So you can see how it works. Yeah, that's going backwards from there. But like if I can do it and make it like more palatable for people, then like it's obviously like it's a thing. It's possible. It's not just talk.
Right. Right.
Hey,
how's it going, Jared?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Having a good first day of the camp.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh man, it's too nice a day to be inside.
Yeah, right. All right, I'm taking space. Okay.
All right.
Next session. Have a good one, y'all.
Two.
Thanks.
Web rings everywhere. Wait, we're slowly. We need to number over here. Web ring. Doug, will you be our facilitator?
Do I have to? How much time do we have? Go.
We just started. Now's the time. You can go see if I can track down William.
Yeah, that might be. The historical retrospective would be useful.
Yeah. As a start.
So a year ago, we discovered or hit upon the wonderful idea that you can register
emoji.ws domain. So we got a spiderweb wedding ring as the Indieweb ring, and then did nothing with it for a year. So I guess the purpose is we want to do something with it, and to kind of like what does the user-facing bit look like, and if anyone has was any web rings or has any memories or.
Has anybody taken notes yet? Oh, you're
Yep.
Sweet, I don't have to do it.
Any luck with
I did not find Lillian. I don't know where she is.
Okay.
I haven't seen her.
I assume she had to run or she. Let's do this.
Yeah. I gave a.
And I kept thinking, like, should the web rings have been combined with the privacies, publishing in small groups major room there? Because it was like, wait, isn't there there's a little overlap. It's not web ring private per se, but there's but
yeah,
sorry.
Probably not.
So what is a web ring?
Yeah, what is a web ring? So it's, I mean, at a fundamental level, it's like a series of web links that take you in a circle through various web pages. And yeah.
In the fantastic
Lillian had some
1990s.
great stories of ones she actually maintained, which would have been useful. But anyone else have any web ring stories?
Never was in one.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I know
There
what they
are
are,
good
but
stories.
I was on one on
It's
GeoCities.
been time with them.
It usually was like a central site you go to. You're like, I want to join this web ring interview URL. They give you a little bit of code and links to previous links.
I think that's, I was trying to remember, what is the
people who are
difference
into
between
this.
that and the blog roll? Yeah. I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
more.
Blog roll
because-
just like, these are my
Because you didn't know
friends.
the people.
Yeah.
It was all software, so it would determine who you would point to next, and you would point to, person one would point to two, two would point to three, three would point to four,
So
and you
it's
didn't have
kinda
to
like
know
it
any
was
of
just
these
random
people.
which site on the ring you'd go to next.
Or
Usually
be
it
in a
was-
particular order. But you didn't, you signed up for the web ring and then assigned who was going to be next on the roll. So you didn't get, the blog roll would have everybody at once.
Right.
And you would set it up so that you knew with all the people you knew. But the web ring, you'd say, we're all into Harry Potter. And people would sign up and they would click next, next, next. It was Harry Potter fan web ring.
That was very cool.
Yeah. Web rings are one of those, you see, when I got started on the web in like the very end of the 90s, I was pretty young and the web was confusing, and I've kind of forgotten like how awesome web rings were. But the more I talk about them with people, the more I remember like, yeah, this was how I used to read the internet. Was like hopping from page to page, and web rings were one of the coolest ways to actually like dig into a subject or a fandom.
How you discover new things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Discovery, like, and sort of the delight of like, or sometimes, disgust, but.
But did
anything
the
else?
hashtag replace the web ring?
No,
No.
not at all.
Why? But if I tag my post, if I'm looking for anybody with a Harry Potter post,
But
and
that's a
everybody.
post, not a person.
Yeah, like.
That's very good.
Yeah, web rings are more about like finding a brand new site you hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I think there was the beauty of the one at a time recommendation, like
Yeah,
with
that's
the
true.
blog roll was the whole list, and a hashtag, you just get overwhelmed. This is just, it's more of a serendipity is part of it.
So were most of them, did they have both forward and back links, or
Yeah,
were there some that
yes.
were one direction?
I think
And
we
random,
always
I guess,
could go
is-
in either direction.
Yeah, and I've seen both. One would sometimes say like, take me to a random page.
Yeah, that was pretty common.
We should pull up that. If Lillian's not here, we can fake it.
Wikipedia had a ton of examples
There's
of old web rings still live.
Hotlinewebring.club.
It's .club, so that's new.
That's still around, right?
This is new. Yeah, this came out like a couple years ago. We have it linked on our wiki under examples.
Oh, it's so pretty.
There's also a tilde club one.
Random tilde. Okay. That looks pretty similar.
Yeah, like so they linked all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's not a WebRing if it's like that.
Well, no, it is on the actual pages.
Okay.
I mean, it's links to, I mean, WebRing usually did list.
No,
People that
this
were
is
in it.
always next and previous and random.
Yeah, see, they've got next and previous right here.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
No random on that, but yeah.
Some of them did have like an index of like, these are all the people in our WebRing. Depends how big they were.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a, 2016-ish, 2017, like, hey, let's, especially when Tilde Club came out. Tilde Club probably has a ton of them.
Never heard of
What's Tilde?
Tilde Club is I forget who it is, but it's just basically a guy just running a Unix server and he gives you a Tilde account, So it's like,
yeah.
It's very old school.
Well, that's real.
Yeah, and each of these, like the reason it's called Tilde Club is it takes you back to the days where like
Right,
on a
yeah,
Unix host.
Tilde user, yeah.
This is
Yeah.
WebRings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I got distracted talking about taxes as usual.
Who hasn't been there?
Yeah, let's.
Oh, Tilde Club WebRing just redirects you to a random user. It's not,
Yeah, that's not quite right.
yeah.
But I feel like somebody else set one up there. Maybe not. Yeah, we were just starting out, so we're talking about cool web rings and how we miss them.
What defines the web ring? Like, how is it different from other ways of discovering things?
It's a loop.
Collection of
Yeah,
websites
that's
linked
a
together
big
in a
loop.
circular structure.
It's a ring, it has it right in the name.
It's a data structure in computer science.
Are we trying to create a ringmaster-less web ring? There'd be a ringmaster.
Yeah.
Oh,
I almost, just because it sounds so cool, I want to keep
Yeah. Well, and I was busy preparing for the session, reading the history of web rings. And apparently, one of the big problems that when Yahoo acquired webrings.org was that they killed the protocol for who owned and managed who was the ringmasters. And so you had to have a Yahoo account to then get it, which wasn't a huge problem. The big problem was the first person to try to, with the Yahoo account, to try to access it would then get control of the web ring.
Oh my god.
And they had no way to like,
Oh my
yeah, they had like no way to change it. And so a bunch of web rings died because the ringmasters couldn't get control of it back from
Like whichever rando.
the rando person that like adopted it.
How many wonderful things has Yahoo killed?
I was reading that and I was like, oh my God, Yahoo bought this too? Do they just buy things? Do they make money?
No, they don't. They went out of business. They don't make money.
This is, I mean, are we gonna be looking back in like 5 years and be like, Verizon, did they just buy things?
Can we use the old term? I like expanding unidirectional link of pages.
Yes.
Yeah. Lillian, did you have anything prepared in terms of talking about web ring history?
Oh, am I leading this session?
No.
Okay.
Unless Doug,
I think that-
you want to try to step down.
I mean, you can certainly lead it if you want to. I think.
No, I don't need to lead this. Yeah, Yahoo killed web rings. There we go. I think the forward, backward, and random buttons are the important parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jared.
I'm just wondering,
Yahoo shouldn't be Yahoo anymore.
is the thrust of this conversation to set up a web ring or to talk about like how?
Why?
Creating new IndieWeb protocols around web rings.
So what we have so far is we don't even really need to create any new protocols.
Yeah.
Do we actually need a gardening process or so the
Yeah, we could get into tech, but I think for this session, I would like to figure out like what would we need to make to make web rings cool again, particularly to make them IndieWeb.
Time machine.
Like,
sorry. Well, I wonder if those two things are mutually exclusive. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
But I worry if making web rings cool again is mutually exclusive with making them
IndieWeb.
Well, not IndieWeb in general, but IndieWeb specifically. Like the protocol you all were talking about sounds awesome, and also sounds absolutely fucking impossible for like a new person to want to do, because you need like 3 IndieWeb building blocks implemented on your domain in order to do it, right? Am I correct? Do I remember it correctly?
Yeah.
You need web mentions, micro formats.
You need, yep. And then your web mentions also need to be able to update.
Okay, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's cool. And like probably the most fun thing for everybody to build. But if we want to make them cool again, I think that might actually be a little different than making them IndieWeb. And it's totally fine to choose one path and not the other because we're not that cool anyway. So
I was joking, and I still know what's possible. I talked about it, like, could you just have a new class in your H card that said, I'm in this ring, and that's all, it, you know, and
how cool would that be?
And once you put that, so you could have 5 in your ring, you know, and it's in your, you know.
But then how
ring.
does it display?
So that's more like a blog roll.
Yeah, well, because the web ring is like, it needs the buttons and you need to display it.
You can list your membership in the web ring, but you need those links.
So was there any curation or anything or exclusivity at all, or was it just anyone who wanted to be in gets in it?
It really depended on the ring. So the way, so when I was ringmaster for the, I know, doesn't it sound great? So when I was ringmaster for the web ring that I was on, it was exclusively an invite only web ring.
And you get booted out if you didn't have the web ring code on your page.
Yeah. Oh, that was incredibly important.
That was the easy way.
Yeah, because don't break the ring was really, really important. And like part of my duties as ringmaster was that every so often I literally just click through all the things.
Some do like the term ring mistress.
Yeah, I like ringmaster.
I had a business card that said web mistress.
The ringmaster.
I had web mistress at drinkypretty.com. Anyway, I think what's cool about web rings generally was the fact that they were what you made of them. So like some people when they started their website out would have like, they would get in the big ones that they could get in, and then they would like, it would be like a goal to like make a cool enough website that you could like get in some of the other.
But they usually are some kind of affinity group, right?
Yeah. Like I was describing last night. So the one that I started and was like the largest that I maintained was a Pretty Boys for fan websites of like glam rock bands. And that was mainly because my like largest website that I maintained was a Placebo fan website. And so like I maintained this fan listing of like Pretty Boy related websites. But then the other one I maintained that my personal website was on that I didn't start was I didn't go to my high school prom and I don't regret it, which is like, you know, a totally ridiculous thing, but also like was very fun to look through the personal websites of people that cared enough to like have that displayed on their front page, right? So, and I think that's like, I think that this is also like part of the cool, I think it's one of the cool things that's sort of blog roll related, but a little more discovery oriented. Because I just think about like, so in reading the Death of Web Rings page, the main thing was that like search engines got faster and better. And so web rings were like less important because not that hard to make a website anymore. And it was a lot easier to find websites when you were looking for them on search engines. Right. And I think that we're now at this point where like Google completely controls what I see and have access to and their algorithms are very much what's serving me up, and their algorithms are mostly great, but like every time I go into an incognito tab, I see a totally different world for the same search terms. And I think what's cool about web rings that like potentially could have a lot of fun is that it's building an affinity group and controlling the way people move through the webs based on your own narrative. And so you can like build like, you know, I could have a genderqueer group of folks, like I was in a genderqueer web ring in like 2004 and I could bring it back. But like, and like that part's really cool, especially considering, I mean, I also could see like nefarious ways they could be used in kind of interesting ways where there's a lot of stuff that Google suppresses. And like you could easily be like, we're the web ring of sites that steal TV shows and stream them, right? You know, like, because like Google doesn't let me see that when I Google like I want to see blah 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 show for free, but like a web ring could easily be a way to circumvent that. So got to imagine the like bad use case, right?
Yeah.
which is like, I might benefit from that use case. I don't even.
Guys,
know.
there's still.
You said Webrings might have gone underground.
Webbring.org is still there.
Yeah, no, and I'm looking at a ton of active Webrings right now on this Webbring, on webringworld.org/list.
So apparently the dude who started the Webbring, like built the whole original thing, bought it back from Yahoo at the end, but it was, as the Webbring history post said, it was too late.
Isn't the Webbring, like, quote unquote competitor these days not Google though, but maybe let's say Twitter?
That's what I said.
In terms of-
Did the
in terms of,
hashtag replace
like
the
if I
functionality?
follow, interesting person A on Twitter, it's gonna say you might want to follow interesting person B.
Honestly,
and so
I would
essentially that's kind of like the
Probably
Webbring.
a Facebook group killed, like, I think many things killed Webrings, but like for the affinity group part of it, Facebook groups is like now the way that you find fans of a thing and talk to them.
And then you're miserable.
Right.
Because you're on Facebook.
Yeah.
Sorry, go
The
ahead.
way that, you're talking about how, like, the mindset that you get into them, like, it kind of provides this alternative to Facebook and Twitter where, like, people are constantly, like, almost unconsciously just keep going back for little hits of, like, something, give me something to, like, what if, if there were web rings and I was discovering them, that would be the thing I would start, like, going, like, oh yeah, I want to look at it.
Yeah.
What's next on this? What's next?
It's like a fun hole to get into, right? Like, I feel like I don't get a lot of opportunities to just go deep into people's personal pages anymore unless I choose to. And I feel like that could be a fun internet hole.
And I do think that, we started this convention of Micro Monday to be like the opposite of Follow Friday. And one way that it's different is that, people are strongly encouraged to just recommend a person that to follow and mention something about them, like long list of @ tags that nobody's, you see that and you go like, what am I gonna do? Click 3 on each one of these things? I don't even know why you recommended them. Like, follow these people, boom, 10 people. You don't follow any of them, but
right.
somebody,
Yeah.
I just like, that's what I like about the web ring is that it the one at a time, like, here, have a recommendation.
Yeah, I also feel like one thing I'm really curious about is like, who are these 10,000 people a month who look at my personal webpage that has not much of consequence on it, and like clearly people are finding it through some sort of funnel. Google Analytics doesn't give me a lot of insight into that, but I feel like a lot that being part of an affinity kind of discovery network that is outside of the Google algorithm could be kind of valuable for like cultivating the audience that I like on my website.
How is GoDaddy.com is paying for webring.org? Like they're corporate.
Hey, well, let's chat at GoDaddy.
I can't find when this page was last updated.
By the way, the GoDaddy community manager is super into drag queen. Build a website.
That was named.com.
Really,
or yours.
No. I'm
So
chatting.
you might have to fight name.com for it because they want to sponsor.
Oh, we'll see.
You might have to get a little rivalry going.
Yeah, Stacy DePolo is
Well,
attending.
She's here. Or did she not come?
She's here virtually.
Oh, okay.
Is there like an MVP kind of spec or description of like
That's for tomorrow.
This would be the minimum
Yeah, I was gonna say,
implementation of WebRing?
I will be working on that tomorrow. I believe Doug intends to work on that tomorrow.
I
We would
love
be happy to have anyone help us start building a minimum viable IndieWeb web ring, which I think might be the fun place to start as a way of engaging IndieWeb people and kind of like folks who are almost back in that 90s mindset of just like, I love the web, let's do silly things. And that might be a way.
And I just found a D&D web ring, so I'm going to get Martine to do it as well. So-
And I would also say, like, right now I have this website is part of the IndieWeb movement in like the footer of my page, and I would much prefer that say this website is part of the IndieWeb movement, and then like you could click to go to other, because right now it links to our website, which, as previously described, maybe does not do a great job of enticing people.
Yeah. Well, I was also thinking like the indie marks. Like imagine that it earns you a badge, which puts you in a web ring, and then you can go through and see other
level 1 or whatever, I forget what the other level 1 websites, and then check the next level, see what they look like.
Yeah.
No, they took it off.
Yeah, so gamifying, indie-webifying your website through WebRings.
How complicated can we make this?
I'm gonna add lots more flyings.
Well, I mean, when you look at the list of the old features, we're not hard. They did have a statistics. They did have a
counter.
Yeah. Yeah, and it'd make it big and ugly.
Oh, counter. I need to put a counter
I saw
on
that
my
on
website.
somebody's site recently with the old counter.
God, I remember when I installed my first web counter. What a memory to have.
It was such a cool thing, right?
Yeah. On my
Why did it go up so slowly?
on my memories.aol.com homepage.
It'll just be depressing for me. Like, oh, 4 people this month.
Right, that's why people stop putting it on.
Yeah, because it made you realize how much of a loser you
Pointed
are.
out that it doesn't.
I have no
work that
friends.
good.
I used to get so much email from people at my JavaScript book. Why don't you teach us how to have a counter with JavaScript? Because you can't have it doesn't work that way. Well, somebody told me I could do that. Yes.
It wasn't actually counted.
Just give them a random number.
That's what the counter I'm going to do is just
It
have
always
it
says 1.
14,332 people in the last 10 minutes visited this. 3 people have visited this.
I have been wondering if Shopify does that, where because you know, like on some websites it pops up and says so and so has just bought a such and such product
Oh,
in
I think that's
town,
probably-
and I think it might be random.
I definitely think like when the airlines say like 1 seat left.
Oh,
in this
yeah.
price is
Oh, that's
complete bullshit.
Yeah.
So
One
here's-
seat until you
here's
pull
a
up an
list.
incognito browser.
Here are the list of the most common functions. It was the previous, skip, previous, next, skip next, next list, random, list, home, statistics, and search.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's too much for MVP. I'd be happy with next and last.
Next,
Yeah.
previous,
That's a good
random.
Yeah.
goal.
Previous,
I think
Previous.
random button is the stretch goal.
Previous is going to
Yes.
be easiest.
Random's fun.
Yeah, but also it's already pretty random to just hit
Yeah.
a forward arrow on a website
Yeah,
and
what more, you know.
The main reason for these besides next and previous is in case the next site,
So-
the previous site is dead.
oh yeah, or doesn't it doesn't have a
Or doesn't have a ring.
ring on it.
Question: do all web rings have a homepage?
No.
And is it?
Most
Do-
do, but,
So most do. Yeah, I have the feeling that most do.
well, there aren't any anymore. Most did.
You just had a list.
He has not
of-
found one.
I haven't found that they're existing. These are, they're like archived or
That's
they're,
what looked
or they're missing. Like it's a page like the D&D web ring just has a D&D.
Have you looked on, like, search for like tilde.club web rings? Because I know there's multiple ones. The one I just shot was like just
Yeah.
official,
I did
official
some-
like people
There's
on.
pages, he keeps finding pages about web rings.
But I haven't
But
found an
he's not seen a
example
web
of
ring
an
in-
active one yet in the
A
wild.
web ring in the wild, yeah. But lots of pages about web rings.
And the trademark has been denied, so you can use the word web ring all you want.
Is that all one word, web ring?
Can you?
Oh, there is a style guide.
And the trademark does not apply to wedding ring spider web emoji.
Well, we found out that because we were talking about it in the
Lowercase
other room.
r.
Creative Commons actually says you can't even create, you can't put a public domain license on your trademark. Anybody can still go trademark that. Like, so like we were talking like, you know.
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between
Yeah.
copyright.
Oh, yeah, you're a message.
Yeah.
Do you want to come up? I feel bad. I don't know.
No, it's trademark and copyright. are two things.
I had a couple drinks and I woke up with 1,000 nerds. The story of Tilde Club. There's a literal 3D spinning web ring.
You found it?
Well, that's not.
That is not an MVP.
But that's cool.
That actually wouldn't be that hard to do. That's not.
That was fun.
That wouldn't literal web ring. I don't know. Refresh it sometimes,
But the
maybe.
question is, if you click on it, does it go to the next?
Yeah.
It's in-
Yeah, well, these are next previous. I mean, it's listing
Then
them all.
that's. It's not a
Where is
web
that? Do you have
ring
a
to me.
URL for that?
What?
You have a
I'll
URL?
drop that.
So
That's
whatever
the web
we
ring,
work
as
on,
I remember
like,
web ring.
then we
You're
can
looking for
try it
that
out
little
in
thing
our
that we were
own.
just
I'm
talking about,
looking
little
at
picture.
previous, next.
Yeah, I wish I could figure out where
Indie
that picture was. We
web
found it.
Yeah,
Like, to the Indieweb ring.
I think what I'm interested in is, and I guess this comes back to your question, Jared, is like, I think I would like to build an IndieWeb ring, an IndieWeb web ring.
Examples.
Yeah.
That's, you want that picture right there.
And,
No, not that at all.
yeah, so like,
So I built it for
confused.
something.
what,
Like that.
what would it take,
I don't want a
Like,
picture.
What would you
I
want
want to
that
see
web
somebody
browser to look like
who
on your
has
website?
one.
I liked.
Live.
I know, I don't think I can find one.
Yeah, I don't think there are. That's, I think web rings are dead.
And not like.
This one doesn't have next and previous, it just says random,
Right.
but this is,
Yeah.
again, this is just the Tilde Club.
Yeah.
web ring. I don't think
What
it's.
it
But I
is.
believe there are none in existence anymore.
Yeah, but
And that's
it's
sad.
on the
We can bring
sites
them
I
back
was
then.
looking
Yes.
at,
Oh, right, yeah.
It was.
Oh, a list of web, I wonder if any of these are actually. Archive.
2014, man, we got close, we got to 2012.
This one
Oh, yeah,
at
it's
the
just
bottom
links.
is like.
Ring search.
Well, hotline web,
2006.
the hotline one I showed earlier works.
Does it?
And people,
Yeah.
some put it at the top, some put it at the bottom,
like
and I think
on the
that's
wiki.
okay, I think you should.
That's it's like a new one, it's,
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, this guy said it still worked, but when he
There.
built it back into a site, he was the only
That's
person
like-
left in his
that's
web
a-
ring.
That was-
Oh, yeah.
And I
the one up
think
there,
that,
hotline
you know,
web
a
ring
lot of
club
people
dot
would
club.
go and
Each
use
one of
that.
those
This
sites
is
has
what-
an next and
There's
previous.
no-
That's what this guy did.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Okay.
default.
I showed
Click there.
Which
There
is
are
When you're
no.
on, yeah, right there.
He's going
Okay, and the
straight,
next and previous work?
But this one is just, you know, it's just a little text thing.
Ah, okay, that's a web ring to me.
Proud
Holy
member of
shit.
the hotline web ring.
Whereas,
Ah!
up here, this
Oh,
person
that's
put
not
it
good.
in his,
I was like, around his name.
That one asked your name too, I didn't enter it.
that's
Oh,
the one
nice,
she
I'm
saw.
stuck in their frame.
Well, now, here's, now this,
Man, that takes me back.
And unfortunately,
So
then the next one, it
yeah.
links to something. that has
this one's
these-
different, but it displays all the pages here.
Yeah,
doesn't
that's,
have the-
that's
Right.
my
And
one
then it has the
complaint
next
looking
buttons
at
up
the
here.
hotline thing is, at least on mobile, like,
Not a web ring.
at least half the pages, I'm
Web-
like scrolling
web-
all around.
Oh, well,
Even
yeah.
when
Oh, wait,
there's
there
more
it is.
than
Next
that.
ring.
So here's another way, you know, just slightly.
Yeah.
Next in
Just
the
don't-
ring.
yeah, next
Yeah,
in
People
so
are
it's not
using their own
really,
style sheets.
that's
So that,
more
I
like a
think
blog
that's,
roll.
that's a minimum thing, it's just that it has to,
Yeah.
the code has to include a
All we do
tag
is
that can,
check that you link to your correct previous and next links.
you know, and that you can, somebody
Is there a
can
WordPress
add,
plugin?
style in their CSS to. Or, yeah, I think it's better.
Yeah, I think we
styling.
wouldn't necessarily put any requirements other than like we see in your page that you have these links.
Right, no, right, but aside from being a requirement, like making it easy for people to.
Oh, the WordPress plugin hasn't been updated in 5 years.
So WordPress plugin?
There's a there's a camp
There's a
web ring.
WordPress camp web ring. There was.
Fewer than 10 active
Do you
installs.
have a, where is this? I need this.
He Googled.
I just Googled WordPress web ring plugin.
Okay.
And there's one right here, Drupal web ring manager. Is,
Oh, the
Two people.
WP camp. When you say camp, I was like, wait a minute, is there an
I'll-
IndieWebCamp web ring?
Oh, yeah.
I'll see what happens.
Like
I'll install
WordCamp,
this and see what
yeah.
happens when I put this on my website.
Yeah, I think it's only
Not
two
gonna
people have
Anyway.
installed it.
No,
Why
but-
does this happen on DuckDuckGo?
Yeah.
I get search results on WordPress that are all
Fewer than 10
non-English
active installations.
Yeah, it's gonna, it won't,
WordPress
work- well,
domains.
it won't work.
It's
Nothing
just
works on my
gonna, like,
WordPress site,
change
so it's not
over
gonna be.
and over and over.
I'm, but let's see what happens when I install it.
Oh, this is getting silly.
I heard this was the fun room.
Yeah.
We're talking web rings.
I found an old WordPress web ringing plugin. I'm gonna see what happens.
We're back in the
We're all
90s
geeking
here.
out over the whole web ring. Awesome.
Well, I knew that it would be interesting just to talk about like what did it mean? and
Yeah.
What would.
Our current plan is to not be Yahoo.
That was a good
It's
goal.
on there, just don't be Yahoo.
I love it. I really hope that's an Etherpad.
Is anybody updating Etherpad?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
sure.
Oh,
What?
he's
already
Okay.
said fix it.
Okay. I hope it says don't be
It doesn't.
Okay, good.
Oh my gosh.
Do you find a working one?
No, but I think the plugin isn't that bad. It gives you the code to throw on your website. It has the styling right there.
Oh, it has a little table.
It has my ring management, my ring stats. Fail. That's not.
Oh, bummer.
That looks
It's. I mean.
incredibly effective.
Yeah.
That's pretty cute. What is it compatible with? Which
Oh
version of
my
WordPress?
Lord.
Old.
The list of URLs is baked in. Their change log is just like adding new URLs. That's a version.
All right, I gotta delete this plugin, but I had to try it.
Oh, this is good.
Check out the SVN repository.
Oh man, it's just one PHP file, one CSS file. Give me these URLs. Yes! It's just a list of URLs in the code.
I commented out.
Yeah. Sorry, wpmeetuphamburg.de. You're out of here. Oh, that is so crazy.
So like send them a message or something when you install it, and then they ask you something.
Considering it's been years since it was last updated.
That'd be amazing.
We want, you know what? That'd be awesome.
I know the
And
people.
in the NYC crowd, if we could get,
Found another one. Wait, do they have lesbians who tech in New York?
they probably do. Maybe one or two.
I thought it was only in San Francisco.
No, I'm thinking there might be.
Well, the summit's only in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, the summit. But we can do an IndieWebCamp. We're already going to organize one, so maybe we're doing IndieWebCamp New York. Maybe why can't drag queens build websites be a national day?
Yeah. Well, we could do it in Berlin. I know a lot of drag queens in Berlin.
Nice.
If there's a town for build it, my German is not good enough to teach.
No, you're gonna do it here, aren't you?
Build a website day in Berlin.
No, but do it here.
I know. I'm just trying to figure out how I get to Berlin in November.
Oh,
I'll try.
priorities here, people.
And also, I know a lot of drag queens there, so and plenty of spaces that would be happy to host some drag queens building websites. But
All right, I gotta get rid of this plugin. Who knows what it's doing on my website?
I don't feel like. I wonder if I could teach build a website.
Well, I started blogging. That's what I did with my virtual HWCs, because like the first time I had my students go to one, like somebody started talking about Microsoft, they just quit. Like that was weak. So I started HWC blogging 101. And literally like, how do I make my first website?
Seems.
So there was a fun post like that got me thinking about this again. Back in May on tdium.co, which is a fun, goofy medium to send up. It's amazing. Yes, this story is called By Our Powers Combined, and it's a different history of the web ring that has a lot of surprising things like, where was it in here? Microsoft bought the Internet Link Exchange, which was like one of the most popular banner ad networks that worked like a web ring. So like you would put a banner with this in the Internet Link Exchange on your site, and in exchange for being part of the ring of ad sites, your site would appear on other people's sites.
I remember that.
CSS code.
And that was in '98 that Microsoft bought them for $265 million. Like,
wow.
Like web rings were a big deal.
Of 20 years ago.
Yeah.
$1 million.
Yeah, right.
An investment firm bought webring.org. I think that alone is worth contemplating.
Mm-hmm. And what else? So, yeah, like the founder of, where's this guy? Basically, the person who founded DreamHost got his money by selling his web ring.
It's on Orbit.
Yeah.
So WebRing was originally created by Dave Wheel in '94, sold it in '97, and then promptly founded DreamHost.
Well, that's
No citation, so who knows?
well, DreamHost already likes us because they host homebrew website.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I'm just lost and having fun now. That's the whole point.
It's okay. That's part of what
I just see this is.
It seems like web rings are working for you.
I want it. I remember it. It's fun. And now I'm just like, Dave, you have another job to do right now. See this plugin? It needs to work.
Yeah, please do. So yeah, this discussion, and I think what feels core to recapturing like the feel of web rings as they were, doesn't really fit with what Doug and I were discussing in terms of like how to finesse IndieWeb building blocks into a functioning web ring. Because like landing on home pages is important, and having those links previous index on homepages was like super important.
I don't know, doesn't that get us back to DNS?
Sorry, that was like, this is what happens when you plan things at a meetup, but lubricated by libation.
I thought that was one of those like treat it kind of like a pinned post answers where like
As long as you're displaying that post on your homepage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that could work. And one of the simplest implementations could be that the sign up service is just like, here's a snippet of HTML. If you don't know what you're doing, just put this somewhere on your homepage. It happens to have the micro formats to markup for
your own
entry. Yeah.
The plugin I'm using, well, what it did was when somebody joined your WebRing, it just emailed them the CSS to put on their website.
HTML.
No, it says it emails you the CSS is what it
Not
says.
just CSS.
I mean, this plugin hasn't been updated in 3 years.
Well, it also has to be pretty. So there should be some inline CSS.
Some plain.
Probably some highlight, maybe a little bit of scroll code.
GIF
around
buttons.
it.
I want a blinking next button. I found my very first buttons I made, and it was like from Animation Factory, like just old, ugly.
So is anyone
big
into
GIF
like
buttons.
looking to do
I used
this
to have
as like a
followed
separate project,
snowflakes on my website.
like a project site or anything?
I could
Or just trying to do on the IndieWeb wiki and totally like.
I think my goal for tomorrow would be to try and build an IndieWeb web ring that is for people on the IndieWeb who identify as like, I'm in the IndieWeb, that we could have people actually like use.
Right.
So it's
but
like,
like where would like, are you thinking about just trying to make anything work at all, or like a site that would introduce people to the web ring?
I would like to have a site, like a site that introduces you to the IndieWeb web ring.
IndieWebRing.biz.
Yeah, IndieWebRing.biz.
Solid plan.
Oh, look at that.
How do you feel about .io?
Aren't there issues with that we documented?
That's why I'm asking.
It's just mismanaged. I don't know. I don't have a real problem with it. This is a goof, so.
Somehow amazingly, webring.io is available.
Okay. I have spiderweb emoji, diamond ring emoji.ws.
Yeah, which is the best.
So like.
And the only web ring I want to be part of.
So Doug found that last year, and it seemed like he was.
You registered it last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about web rings last year.
But we
And
did not-
there wasn't any, I think we thought of it like very late on days 2.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a session.
It was a throwaway discussion, and then we found the domain, and we're like, ha ha ha. And I realized that Doug was going to leave the summit without buying the domain, and I said, no, I'm buying this domain.
So you own it.
So I own it, yeah. And it's one of my regrets from last year that together had a session that was like just a bunch of scribbles that Jonathan made in PowerPoint, and now it's like a huge new thing. Now it's the year of the reader.
When it
could
have
have been the year of the web ring.
It's going to be the year of the web ring.
That's right.
Next year.
And drag queen building website day.
Yeah, definitely.
That
takes precedence.
I could just use IndieWeb and throw the links in there, and it would technically work.
Wait, hold on.
I mean, I have to change the style and step in my settings.
Yeah, he just installed a plugin for his WordPress site, and now he can host a web ring.
That's beautiful.
That's scary.
Also,
Today, web ring, tomorrow.
onewebring.org is also.
One rubber. That is good idea.
Yeah. I think it'll be-
Let's name this
yeah.
IndieWeb?
I don't know how, do you want to give us a quick?
I've never run a web ring on a
about
CMS.
how the
I just
DNS
realized.
system-
No, no.
So one idea was
Yeah,
you
right.
register a domain, point it at this DNS server, and then you have a web ring. So then
Who wants to be in my web ring? I can add you right now.
what you could use maybe what was it, web mentions to add yourself, and then you'd get there'd be some mechanism to add your website.
Will it check? I mean, I think one of the things that don't break the ring items there is that it needs to check that you have some sort of web ring code,
Do I need a
which
code?
is
Yeah,
like,
it says, I got stuff I need to
I
code.
can't imagine where the web mention goes in a way that also looks like web ring, but like people smarter than me probably can. But like, could that web mention actually be the piece of code?
Well, I think there'd be a central
2-minute
place where
warning. Thank you.
the web mentions would go, and then that would send one to the
And then it would send back.
starting post.
Well, as an MVP, you don't need to make this service for anybody to set up a web ring, right?
Right, no, we just make the one.
Yeah.
And yeah, you would sign up, maybe if we're pushing for IndieWeb, you sign in with your domain. And then we say, great, you want to be part of this. I checked your homepage. I don't see the web ring links there. Here they are. Just make sure 2 links appear on your homepage, that link to previous and next. And click again to check again. And as soon as they appear, it's like, great, you're in the web ring. Tell your friends. I think that's a minimum viable web ring. Like,
Yeah.
And then
I'm going to be done
we
before
can
the
add
next room.
like periodically checking to see if the links are broken. And that's it. We did it. So that's what I'm going to be building out tomorrow. I'll start there, and then we can add more IndieWeb features to it. We can add more admins to it. Like yeah. I think we'll leave it open for now.
Okay, no, I need to, that's
Can
my
you
problem.
make it your goal that we can join your web ring by the end of the day tomorrow? Do you think that's feasible?
I think yes. I think that has to be my goal.
No, my goal has to be then getting that WordPress site to minimum web ring support.
Yeah.
level.
That's actually like a pretty good, I feel like that's like concrete.
I mean, that makes me excited. That's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's like weirdly gives me a reason to want, you know,
Where do you want to run it?
what do you mean?
Please don't make it need micro formats too, because that plugin is broken.
I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, I already have a WordPress.
Oh, 'cause you wanna use your own
site.
WordPress
I
theme,
just
you can't
haven't
use one of
done
theirs.
anything with it other
The micro formats too is broken right
I
now.
think I have docked to the
Plugin.
point where you can
It is creating an error
just
that is.
on your repository and
Yeah.
run it, and
But do you have?
end up with
Using my theme, which I'm not going to change.
Let's encrypt serve
It's
plus.
my
That's
website.
why, so it never micro formats, it will
I have
never.
a fairly large website. Move over here.
I broke my head, just
It's on your button.
too many.
Too many things.
Too many things. Too many stickers on your.
Look at the code.
Makes me wonder. Pick something.
So what, an option
Of course, I
one,
love
what
all
did it
your
say that it's set up for you? I don't want.
Yeah, I think as long as you can, because that's the same requirement to like log into the wiki. So you just set up rel equals me links to someplace.
No, rel equals me.
And then you're.
Unfortunately, we don't have Twitter for that.
Could we,
I know.
could it be rel equals whatever the name of the web ring
It's
is?
Aaron to open up IndieLogin.com. I mean, we're using on the wiki.
Yeah,
All right, there's
I
2
think
minutes about-
webring.us needs to
I would
be.
switch Indie Book Club to it too. So
Nice.
Yeah, I'm not.
Web ring, come on.
Are you interested in web rings? Because we're legit bringing web rings back.
I have one on my website.
Yeah, see,
Please, I want an anomaly.net wants to join your web ring.
I have to, okay.
it's
let me do it.
it's basically like just it's a circle of sites where they link to each other. So like at the footer you have I'm part of whatever web ring. Harry
It was
Potter
very
fan.
hot in the
Click
year
next,
like 2000.
Previous and go to a random other site.
Gotcha, okay.
Oh,
It's 90s.
Yeah, I was
It's
gonna say.
legit 90s.
But they were still cool in the early 2000s.
I didn't say they weren't, but I'm just.
They were cool until like Google came, I think. And even then.
Yeah.
I do what happens is also doing is updating.
We're going back to declare our projects, right?
Oh, are we?
Is there a closing, there's a closing session? I think my project, I thought I was gonna like do the thing on my website, but I'm pretty sure tomorrow I'm gonna organize drag queen
This is amazing. And
website
now-
day and just spend all day like trying to get that
We're
done.
the day 2 and that season plans.
Code for this website is right here.
It is. And you can
That's
go for
mine,
free.
for my website.
You register with the.
I registered.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
I was so proud
think
back in
tomorrow
like,
is gonna
I
be-
forget what my first post was, just maybe like
Yes.
2000, late 2000.
I need to book that.
I rolled my own
It's
blogging
actually like
software, of
the
course.
cheap
It was a
night
single
tonight,
Perl
but
script
it's cheap nights for
that had a single
individuals.
form.
And I'm
typed-
fairly sure
typed
Octane is
text
gonna
and
sponsor
HTML into the form. When you submitted it, my Perl script would open my index.html.
That's what I requested.
Grab everything into a comment that says new post go
I'm
here.
gonna get this to work.
Right,
Saying I wanna-
I
write the
love how
comment and then
dedicated
write
you
the
are to
rest of the
getting this
file.
to work.
That was
This
all it was.
8-year-old
Plug
WordPress
in.
site that hasn't been updated.
Yeah, so it was like my version of a static site generator for a blog. And there, I found an old copy of it where this was how I tried to engage with friends online. I would like convince them to do something similar. And then we would give each other like the password or the secret link to write on each other's sites. And I would get mad. There would be posts on my page where I'm just like, I'm bored, blah, blah, blah. I wish so-and-so would update their webpage. The internet is boring right now.
Yeah.
And
there's like awards too. Like you if somebody like nominated you to win some blog award,
Yeah.
you'd like post like, you're nominated, now I nominate. Like,
Do you remember the
these
site
two,
fights.com?
Yeah.
I don't even know if, I think I did check it out. I don't think it's available. It was like, I don't know, it was basically just like, it's sort of like a web ring. It's you joined this team, and then they had a bracket, and literally it was just other people on the site fights voting for which site they liked more. And like people would go around, like you're supposed to like go to the people in your team, and like everyone had guest books. You're supposed to like be commenting for usually like very animated GIFs. It was very, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like fairies and stuff, you know, so it's like, this fairies bless your site. It was ridiculous and fun.
Closing session in the
It was-
main room.
Somebody left. Oh, wait, you left. Choose person that means. One water bottle, one small.
I just,
Not mine.
I got it, Gregor, I can go to yours for my site. So,
Sweet.
They actually hacked it together in the set.
No, I'm not it's so
This now concludes our broadcast day. Thank you for watching.